Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Just joined Rocks. Fusion Saitama Template. Chapter 81. For Shinzi's behavior, the other Rocks crew members were quite puzzled. Because in the Rocks Pirates, each team is a competitive relationship. The other teams are thinking about how to expand the strength of the team and get more benefits in the next battle. It is really rare to have greatly weakened one's own strength like Shinzi. But doubts are doubts, but no one questioned Shinzi's actions. Because of what he did in the Rocks Pirates, everything will exceed everyone's expectations in the end and produce unexpected results. This prestige established by Shinzi is like a signboard in the Rocks Pirates, making people involuntarily convinced. As usual, Shinzi was exercising in his room. Today's 10-kilometer long distance run has been completed, so there are only those exercise programs that can be completed indoors. After getting along with the pirates these days, and many things that happened, Shinzi no longer has the social fear that he had before, even when he was running outside and being watched by crowds. With the last push-up done, today's workout is complete. After clapping his hands, Shinzi got up and looked in the mirror. The person in the mirror was well-proportioned, with well-defined muscles, which looked like Saitama's muscles. Looking at the treasure behind the person in the mirror, Shinzi raised his eyebrows slightly, and the four words resplendent and resplendent couldn't be more appropriate to describe it. These treasures have been preliminarily judged by Whitebeard before, and they all have at least 6 billion Baileys. 6 billion Baileys, what kind of concept is this? Dozens of lives will not worry about food and drink, which is equivalent to 2.5 heads of rocks. But looking at the money, Shinzi didn't feel much joy in his heart, and was a little bit emotional. Because the money on this boat is completely useless, so it can only be used as a display. Back then, Shinzi was poor in his previous life. He wanted to be chic but had no money. I didn't expect that in Pirate World, the situation is completely reversed. I have money but have no place to use it. Thinking of this, Shinzi felt panicked. Looking at the clothes on his body in the mirror, as well as the layout in this room, they are completely incompatible with these treasures. It didn't reflect the temperament that a nouveau riche like Shinzi should have at all. Boom, boom, boom. While Shinzi was feeling emotional, there was a sudden knock on the door. After simply putting on some clothes, Shinzi didn't go to open the door, but opened the door. Come in directly. The sound of the door opening came from the door. A tall and mighty man with 2 horns on his head and thick muscles stood at the door. Kaido, come in. Hearing this, Kaido was not polite, and walked to Shinzi's side in a few steps. Looking at the treasures piled up in this room, even though he has seen them before, every time he looks at them, 5 words pop out of his mind. Really rich. Are you just piling up your treasures here like this? Don't take any safety measures or anything. Aren't you afraid of being missed? Kaido knew that Shinzi didn't pay much attention to money, but he didn't want to pile these heavenly gold on the side like a pile of sundries. Here, I am the biggest security measure. Will anyone on this boat dare to take my things? Shinzi sat down at the table and spoke slowly. In the Rocks Pirates, apart from the difficult captain, Shinzi can say that no one dares to provoke him. And the captain doesn't have much interest in these things, so it doesn't matter whether there are safety measures or not. After all, if he had the strength, he would not dare to pick up the treasure even if he threw it on the deck. And when Shinzi is not around, there is Chow Libafu guarding beside him, and sometimes Whitebeard will come to help him manage it. So Shinzi was not worried at all about someone's idea of taking these treasures. Ha ha ha, of course not, Kaido resentfully said. What Shinzi said just now was indeed true, and even Kaido couldn't think of anything unreasonable about the house full of treasures. What's the matter? What can you do with me? Shinzi looked at Kaido and asked straight to the point. Hearing this, Kaido smiled. Since I ate the fruit, I feel that my strength is constantly getting stronger, but I always feel that it is not enough. I suspect it is because I have been exercising on the boat. Lack of suitable battles. So I need to fight to improve my strength. So what? Shinzi raised his eyebrows and continued to ask. On the rocks, you can't fight head-on, let alone use large-scale moves. Otherwise, the ship will be destroyed. So I thought, I can go out for a trip. Look for opportunities. Kaido continued. Oh, so you are looking for me, which means you want me to be with you. Shinzi guessed Kaido's intention and spoke. The captain is the captain, I guessed it right away. Kaido said with a smile at this time, and praised Shinzi by the way. Go if you want to fight, what are you looking for me for? Regarding Kaido's words, Shinzi said angrily, and yelled at each captain when something happened. Kid Kaido has also begun to learn to flatter. Hearing what Shinzi said, Kaido smiled and said, recently, I got a message from the other crew members. On an island in the area ahead, there is a famous flower street. Oh, hearing Kaido's words, the corners of Shinzi's mouth rose slightly, and he became interested immediately. What beauties are there in Flower Street? Yes, and a lot. Hearing this, Shinzi nodded. He was a bit confused whether Kaido really wanted to go out to fight to improve his strength, or whether he wanted to go to Waji to have a look. But it doesn't matter to Shinzi, because he is interested. I have always heard that the art skills of Waji are good, maybe this time I can feast my eyes. And by the way, it can be squandered, otherwise, looking at the money every day is useless. It's really a torture. Shinzi doesn't want to be a miser all the time. Well, since you want to improve your strength and need to fight, then how can I, as the captain, not supervise it properly? After all, you are the main combat force of our team. Your strength has become stronger, which is also a good thing for the entire team. Shinzi cleared his throat, nodded and said, so, what time is it? We can set off tomorrow, that island is not far from our route. Seeing that Shinzi agreed, Kaido said with a smile. Okay, let's go tomorrow. The next day, Shinzi was lying on the bed, dreaming a good dream, when he was suddenly awakened by a knock on the door. Rubbing his eyes, he stood up and opened the door. Standing outside was Kaido, who had promised to go out yesterday. In this regard, Shinzi patted his head and was speechless for a while. Because looking at the sky outside, it was only around 5 o'clock, and the sky hadn't even dawned yet. To say that Kaido is so active is because he can't wait to go outside to fight to improve his strength. Even a dog would shake his head when he heard this. Shinzi is now sure that this Kaido is definitely using the name of improving his strength to go to Waji to have fun. After all, he failed to go last time, and he may be holding a fire in his heart. You're too active this morning. The moment Shinzi opened the door, he cursed. Captain Shinzi, if you go at this time, you will be there in the afternoon. With a little preparation, you can enjoy the beautiful scenery on the flower street in the evening. Oh no, the beautiful scenery. With an excited face, Kaido said to Shinzi. In the previous discussion among the crew, when Kaido learned that there was a flower street, he decided to go there. The last time I didn't succeed, there was always a lump in my heart, which made Kaido feel extremely uncomfortable. As for why Shinzi was invited, it was entirely because he had no experience in this kind of place, so he wanted to pull Shinzi. But what he didn't know was that although Shinzi seemed very old-fashioned, he was not much different from him. All right, Shinzi yawned and spoke. While waiting outside Kaido's house, Shinzi casually tidied up inside the house. In addition to a bag of banknotes, Shinzi also took a mask. This mask was collected from the pirates on the ship before, and it looks a bit like a fox in appearance. The purpose of collecting the mask is mainly to consider that it may be used when leaving the ship in the future. After all, with the current influence, it is very likely that others will recognize it. At that time, don't talk about looking at the flower street. Even if you want to buy something, you won't be able to. Let's go. Calling Kaido outside the door, Shinzi carried a big bag of money and walked to the place where the lifeboat was placed. After a while, the two arrived at their destination. From the side of the boat, Kaido pulled the lifeboat out, threw it into the water, and sat on it. No wonder you greeted Captain Rocks yesterday, and you have already planned to set off at this point. Shinzi threw a bag of money onto the deck of the lifeboat, turned over the side of the boat, and landed lightly on the bow of the boat. And took out the navigation tool from his arms, holding the map in one hand, and fiddling with the recording guide in the other. Go early and come back early. When Kaido spoke, the boat had already been started, and with a sound, the sound of water breaking under the lifeboat came out. Hee, I think you can't wait. Shinzi glanced at him and said contemptuously, let's go. Turn to the left. Under Shinzi's instruction, Kaido controlled the direction of the ship, and amidst a roar, the lifeboat gradually distanced itself from the rocks. This time, because it was too early, no one on the deck saw Chinzi off. Fortunately, Chinzi told Whitebeard yesterday that he would go out tomorrow, so there was no need to say goodbye again. As the roar of the ship gradually diminished, the lifeboat gradually moved away in the still faint night until it disappeared. At the port of a bustling island, an extremely luxuriously decorated ship is docked aside. Two young men with huge height differences came down from above. The short one wears a mask, and the tall one has two horns on his head. It was Chinzi and Kaido. Why do you have a mask to wear and I don't? When Kaido got off the boat, he saw Chinzi take out a mask from the bag and put it on. He frowned and asked involuntarily, "With your fame, do you need to wear a mask?" Chinzi pouted, and threw the bag to Kaido. Hearing this, Kaido was stunned for a while, the corner of his mouth twitched, but he couldn't refute. The current Kaido, no matter in terms of strength or fame, is far from when he became the Four Emperors later, so no one can recognize him in this area where the Rocks pirates first appeared. Before the two of them walked a few steps away, a voice came. "Hello, do you need to hire a ship manager?" At this time, a young man in blue clothes came to the port and asked Kaido. "Need it?" Kaido was a little confused when he was asked such a question. In his opinion, this kind of question should be asked to Chinzi, after all, he is the boss who makes the decision. But unexpectedly, this person regarded himself as the leader. But this is understandable, after all, with Kaido's size and the sense of oppression on his body, compared to the ordinary Chinzi standing next to him, he is not ordinary at all. After seeing this scene, Chinzi felt quite novel. Because this island can be said to be the most prosperous place Chinzi has ever seen when he came to this pirate world. Not only does the port exist, but there are also dedicated reception staff at the port. I have to say, this place came to the right place. Okay, in view of the luxury of your ship, you need to arrange multiple people to guard it, so you need to pay 6,000 baileys. The man in Xingyi smiled and said slowly, "Okay." While speaking, without any hesitation, Chinzi reached out and took out a 6,000 bailey bill from the bag, and handed it to the man in Xingyi. After receiving the money, the man in Xingyi flashed a hint of joy in his eyes, and said again, "I don't know if the two of you are here to visit the Flower Street on Shigri Island." "Yes." Chinzi raised his eyebrows slightly, "It seems that there are many people who come to Waji every day. I can take the two of you there, and save unnecessary detours. But you need to pay a guide fee of 1,000 baileys." After hearing the affirmative answers from the two, the man in Xingyi spoke again. "Okay." Chinzi took out another 1,000 bailey bill from the bag. When going out this time, Chinzi had only one idea: spend money where you can, don't bargain. He wants to feel thoroughly what it's like to have money to burn. This can be understood as retaliatory consumption after being suppressed for a long time. But the other party didn't seem to expect that the two would agree so happily. After a little hesitation, he took the money and said politely, "The two please follow me." Under the guidance of the man in Xingyi, Chinzi and Kaido spent about an hour. Passing through the barren area of the outer island, I came to Waji, and at this time, it was already evening. Stand in the area with the widest view. The moment Chinzi saw the Flower Street, Chinzi was attracted by the scene in front of him. The whole street was brightly lit, busy with traffic, and there was a burst of noise in the air, and the buildings on both sides rose from the ground, neatly. The bustling crowd is in a hurry. If you look closely, you can find that there are taverns, shops, and workshops on both sides of the street, and at the end, there is a row of kabukicho that Chinzi is most concerned about. Looking at the scene in front of him, Chinzi seemed to have returned to his previous life, the familiar city that never sleeps. Also with the same expression as Chinzi, there was also Kaido standing next to him, who was in a daze at the moment. At the age of 19, it seemed that this was the first time he had seen such a scene. "Both of you, this is the Flower Street on our island. Since you two have arrived, then I will step back." The man in Xingyi finished his task and bid farewell to Chinzi and Kaido. Hearing this, Kaido nodded. His eyes were completely attracted by the scene in front of him. He didn't even see him, he waved his hand, and signaled him to back off. In the night where the light cannot reach, the man in Xingyi is hidden in the darkness. Looking at the backs of the two and the big bag, his eyes changed slightly. "Chinzi, how is this place? It's not wrong." After watching Kaido for a long time, he looked back at Shinzi and said, "Okay, this time it's the right place." Shinzi said with a smile, looking at the scene in front of him. He knew that he could finally be extravagant this time. Then we're next. Kaido glanced at Shinzi, and didn't go any further in the middle of the sentence, but the meaning was quite obvious. "Don't worry, we have to take care of ourselves first. This way we will be more realistic." While speaking, Shinzi pointed to a barber shop on the side of the street. Immediately afterwards, he walked over there with strides, and Kaido, who was next to him, immediately followed after seeing this. The owner of the barber shop was a man just over 30 years old. When he saw two customers entering the shop at this time, he immediately greeted them with smiling faces. "What kind of haircut do you two want?" Hearing this, Shinzi scanned the surrounding environment, then put the bag aside, and sat on the chair. Looking at himself in the glasses, he opened his mouth and said, "Give me a billion haircut." Hearing this, the barber was taken aback for a moment, as if it was the first time he had seen such a request since he was in the profession. But his professionalism told him that based on this sentence, he probably couldn't cut this hairstyle. "Well, can you be more specific?" Hearing this, Shinzi glanced at the barber. After shaking his head, he sighed. "Then fix the sides a little bit." Shinzi originally thought that in this shop, he could have a hairstyle that would reflect that he is a rich man. After all, in the future, I may never have anything to do with hair. But I didn't expect that this shabby shop couldn't cut it out, so Shinzi had to say the common phrase that he would say every time he went to the barber shop. "Okay." After hearing this, the barber smiled and picked up the hair-cutting tools. On the other hand, Kaido, who is faster than Shinzi, has already started cutting under the operation of another barber. About 10 minutes later, as the two barbers stopped, Shinzi and Kaido stood up from their chairs. The two looked at each other tacitly, and then commented, objectively, "It's handsome." A slightly hesitant voice of praise came from the mouths of the two, which fully explained the improvement in their appearance brought about by this haircut. After paying the money, the two came out of the barber shop, but this is not over yet. Led by Shinzi, the two walked into a clothing store again. "After going around for a while, I spent 3 million Baileys inside to buy 2 pieces of clothing. The clothes in this store are too expensive." Kaido cursed and said, the light blue coat he was wearing cost a full 2 million Baileys. "After all, the skin of sea kings is made, so it's worth the price. Besides, I didn't ask you to spend any money," Shinzi said indifferently. In the world of pirates, sea kings are rarely captured, and it is difficult to be killed by ordinary people, so all the originals on them are very rare in this world. The leather on sea kings, because of its toughness and wear resistance, is the top material for making clothes and other clothing, so its price is very expensive. But for Shinzi, who is worth more than 6 billion yuan, this is nothing more than small money. Spending 3 million yuan only gave Shinzi a small taste of the pleasure of squandering. Walking out of the clothing store, Shinzi wrapped himself in a black coat and said, "Okay, now we can go to Kabukicho." As soon as the words fell, Shinzi walked towards the end of the street. At this moment, with his keen perception, Shinzi found that there were 8 people in the corner of the street, and their eyes were staring at him intentionally or unintentionally. "Are you sure that the bag that the masked man is holding is full of money?" Among the crowd, a man who seemed to be the boss was holding a machete, and asked a man next to him. "Yes, I see it clearly. I estimate that there are at least tens of millions of Baileys in that bag." The speaker was dressed in green clothes, and he was the man who received Shinzi and Kaido at the port. He noticed them when Shinzi's lifeboat was just approaching the port. To be able to decorate such a luxurious ship must be a rich person, and the fact is just as he expected. "Ha ha ha, tens of millions of Baileys, brothers, this time we are going to send it. Don't worry, I will reward you well after I get the money." The man with the big knife glanced at the man in Xingyi, and said with a smile, but when he turned his head, a cold light flashed in his eyes. "It seems that we are being targeted by miscellaneous fish." Kaido next to him also spotted the 8 people in that corner at this time. "Let's go. Clean up the trash fish first." While talking, the two walked away from the clothing store, but instead of heading towards Kabukicho, they walked towards the dark side of the street. As predicted, after Shinzi and Kaido moved, those 8 people followed suit. Just now I thought it would be difficult for people to do anything here, but I didn't expect these 2 idiots to create opportunities for us. Don't be careless, that man who is more than 6 meters tall doesn't seem to be very easy to deal with. What are you afraid of? Each of the 8 of us will cut him into pieces. Stop talking, follow along, and finish the matter as soon as possible. Shinzi and Kaido walked very slowly, for fear that those few people would not be able to keep up. From the clothing store to the dark place where the streetlights can't reach, the 2 stopped. Because in the front, through the brilliance of the moonlight, you can vaguely see 8 people holding machetes, blocking their way 5 meters away from Shinzi. Seeing those 8 people finally appear, the corner of Shinzi's mouth traced an arc. Ha ha ha, I don't know you two. Where are you going? Do you want us to help you lead the way? The leader with the machete in his hand said with a sneer when he saw both of them stopped. I want to send you on the road, why don't you lead the way first? Shinzi said lightly. Oh, you can't escape today. When the man with the machete heard Shinzi's words, his face turned cold and he lost his joking mood. At this time, beside him, a man in Xingyi stood out from the crowd, looked at Shinzi and Kaido, and said with a sneer. I don't even understand the truth about not revealing your wealth, so don't blame us for following you. Shinzi was not surprised by the appearance of the man in Xingyi, it was something that could be imagined with his toes. Hand over the money obediently, and we can give you a happy one later. The man with the big knife completely lost his patience at this moment, and shouted loudly, as if he had eaten the 2 people in front of him. Kaido, I'll leave these miscellaneous fish to you, remember to keep them alive. With a playful expression hidden under the mask, Shinzi said slowly. Hearing this, Kaido squeezed his fist and smiled. Clear, hearing the other party's words, the leading man would not catch the other party without a fight, and suddenly he was furious, waved his hand to the back, and shouted. Don't be ashamed of your face, brothers, go. As soon as the words fell, 6 younger brothers with weapons in their hands rushed out behind him. The next moment, he rushed towards Kaido. Seeing this, Kaido raised his arm slowly. Boom, a voice sounded. In the blink of an eye, the one who rushed to the front was directly broken by Kaido's neck, and the body fell to the ground, making a loud noise. The weapon that was still held tightly in his hand was completely deformed. The man's eyes were wide open, and his face was full of disbelief. It seems that they can't understand why Kaido's seemingly gentle blow has such great power. This scene happened so fast that the others hadn't reacted yet. And when they found something wrong, Kaido had already come to them. Immediately, several people were horrified. I don't understand why such a big man can go so fast. But when they realized the danger, Kaido had already moved. Next moment, Kaido's palm slapped down on one person, as easily as slapping a cucumber. With each palm of Kaido's slap, one person would fall down. Even if they block with the weapons in their hands, they can't change the ending, because even the weapons will be shot in 2 under the huge force. Soon, under the horrified gaze of the leading man, the 6 men who rushed up fell one after another like dominoes. In a few seconds, all died on the spot. The leading man who saw this scene was shocked, his forehead was covered with sweat. He knew that this was a real stubble. He thought that Kaido would be more difficult to deal with, and it would take a while to deal with it. But I didn't expect to be so powerful that he could break the machete with bare hands, and the whole process was calm, showing no signs of exerting all his strength. At this moment, in the man's mind, there was only one thought: run. Such an opponent is not at the same level at all. However, just as the man was about to pull his legs, Kaido's eyes locked on him. Feeling the ferocious gaze, the man seemed to be being watched by a giant beast at this moment, and he lost all thoughts of running away. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. All this was ordered by this man, and he sent us here. He is the mastermind of this incident. It's all his fault. The fear at this time has completely occupied the man's heart, so that he has no thought of resisting or running away. Pointing to the man in Xingyi beside him, he said with a face full of horror. As for the man in Xingyi, his face changed drastically at this moment. He didn't expect that at this moment, this man didn't want to run away, but wanted to justify himself by throwing blame at him. Run. Without any hesitation, the man in Xingyi started to run back. However, in the next second, his footsteps stopped. The man in Xingyi covered his neck with his hands, turned his head in a daze, with a look of astonishment on his face. He couldn't believe what happened just now. As his body fell, blood flowed from between the fingers holding his neck, instantly staining his entire palm red. Boom! The body of the man in Xingyi hit the ground, making a dull sound. Ha ha ha! Still trying to run. The man with the big knife in his hand was full of anger. While speaking, he stabbed the corpse again. If the man in Xingyi hadn't reported this time, he didn't think he would have faced such a situation. Not only had several younger brothers died, but now even his own life was at stake. I have already eliminated the mastermind behind the scenes. Can I change my way of life? The man tightly held the machete in his hand. Blood slipped from the blade, gathered into blood beads on the tip of the knife, and dripped on the ground. The moment the man in Xingyi pulled out his leg just now, the man swung his big knife and slashed up, directly hitting the vital point, killing him with one blow. He looked at Kaido and Qinzi, begging for mercy. Seeing this scene, Qinzi looked at him calmly and spoke slowly. This flower street, do you know which kabukicho is the most interesting? Hearing Qinzi's words, the man was slightly taken aback, as if he didn't expect this masked man to ask such a question. But this doubt is only for a moment. At this moment, he knows that he can't have the slightest hesitation. Lone Red Kabukicho. Oh, Lone Red Kabukicho, Lone Red. Why do you feel that these two words are familiar? After Qinzi got the answer he wanted, he frowned slightly and murmured. I seem to have heard these two words somewhere, but I can't remember them for a while. Seeing that Qinzi got the answer he wanted, the man wanted to beg for mercy again, but he was about to. Next moment, Kaido's slap was slowly enlarged in front of his eyes. Crack! There was a sound of the neck being snapped, and the man fell to the ground. None of the 8 people was spared. Seeing that everyone had been dealt with, Qinzi straightened her clothes. Let's go. In the night, the figures of the two dragged longer and longer under the moonlight until they disappeared. How about it? Shall we go to that lonely red kabukicho next? Kaido looked at the street in front of him as if it was daytime, and said slowly. At this time, he and Qinzi had already returned to Waji. Go. Although that person is an idiot, he must be more familiar with this area than the two of us. Save time to ask people. Qinzi raised his eyebrows. Kaido. Stepping into the street, Qinzi and Kaido disappeared into the crowd under the flickering lights. About half an hour later, the figures of Qinzi and Kaido appeared at the end of Waji. Ha, it's finally here. Sighing, Qinzi wiped the sweat from his forehead. I didn't expect such a short distance to take such a long time, which is enough to see how crowded this flower street is. In front of Qinzi and Kaido, a signboard with flashing neon lights was particularly conspicuous, and the 6 big characters on it were very eye-catching. Lone Red Kabukicho. Qinzi looked at the signboard, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. It seemed that the man hadn't lied to himself. It really looked like that from the outside. But in the end, you still need to experience it yourself to know. Without hesitating at the door for too long, Qinzi and Kaido walked inside. The entrance is an open area. Compared with the outside, the inside is more prosperous. Because in Kabukicho, there are not only fungyu venues, but also izakaya, bars, restaurants and other businesses. However, this is also understandable. After all, these supporting facilities can make customers desire for secondary consumption, which will be a huge income. 2. What service do you need? A voice with a sweet voice rang in Qinzi's ear. In front of Qinzi, there stood a very coolly dressed bunny girl looking at Qinzi with a smile on her face. In Kabukicho, this kind of personal service is not available to everyone. Because there is a lot of traffic here, it is impossible for these bunny girls to take care of every guest. So you can only choose the right one from the customers you have been with. When entering the door, the clothes Qinzi and Kaido were wearing quickly attracted her attention, making the bunny girl's eyes shine. In this kind of place, eyesight is a must for this piece, and she recognized it as Sea King's leather coat at a glance. So in her opinion, Qinzi and Kaido must be rich people, and the rich people here are the masters. Qualify for better service. Well, I need to relax. When Qinzi saw the bunny girl, his eyes lit up. It was the first time he had seen the spy girl in one piece. Although it is not very good looking, it is quite pleasant to look at. Chinzi didn't answer the bunny girl's question directly, but put it another way. And when she heard Chinzi's words, the bunny girl understood it almost instantly. The two, please follow me. While speaking, the bunny girl led Chinzi and Kaido to walk in, explaining while walking. Our Guhong Kabukicho is the most famous kabukicho in this area, with a complete range of facilities. Here, you can enjoy the best service. As long as there is a need and money, it can be realized here at any time. And here, we have 3 types of flower shops, one is shemale, the other is cowherd, and the other is Oran. Speaking of this, the bunny girl turned her head to look at Chinzi and Kaido, the meaning was obvious. What's your taste, please? Sensing the eyes of the bunny girl, Chinzi's face under the mask twitched. This place is really fun. There are ladyboy shops. Oran's kind. Chinzi replied softly. Me too. Kaido also quickly replied at this time. Just hearing the other two gave him goosebumps. Okay, the bunny girl responded, smiled, then turned left and continued walking inside. After about 6 minutes, Chinzi and Kaido finally arrived at their destination. Red Moon Flower Shop. 2. This is the best flower shop in Guhong Kabukicho. After the bunny girl brought the man here, she said a few words before leaving. When he was about to leave, Chinzi took 10,000 berries from the bag and handed it to her. For this kind of place, Chinzi still understands the most basic rules. They brought you here, and they kept explaining along the way, of course the purpose is for tips. Seeing the 10,000 Bailey bill Chinzi handed over, the bunny girl was stunned, as if she didn't expect the other party to be so generous. After reacting, he quickly reached out to take it. He thanked him again and again, and before leaving, he said something inexplicable. While you two are having fun, you should also pay attention to your personal safety. Hearing this, Chinzi and Kaido looked at each other. Be safe. What do you mean? Kaido asked, puzzled. What kind of safety can you pay attention to in this kind of place? Take personal measures well. Chinzi said slowly. Immediately, he walked towards the Red Moon Flower Shop. I have to say that the atmosphere here is very good. As soon as you enter Chinzi, you can smell a tantalizing fragrance. Moreover, the lighting layout of the entire flower shop is also in warm colors, and the sound of very gentle music is melodious in the room. 2 words. Professional. A mama who still has charm. Seeing Chinzi and Kaido coming in at this moment, they immediately joined in. I don't know what private room you two need to open. How much is the most expensive private room here? Chinzi put the bag at his feet and asked. It may be a bit expensive. 180,000 Baileys. And the lady in the flower shop, or other performances, etc. are calculated separately. Mommy smiled and said, shaking the fan in her hand. Then open the best private room. In Chinzi's opinion, the price was not a problem at all, so he opened his mouth and asked for 2 rooms. Hearing this, Mommy smiled even more happily. Okay. So, under her leadership, Chinzi and Kaido were arranged in a very spacious suite. Surrounded by wooden sliding doors that can be opened left and right, there is a small door platform on the side. In the middle is a huge open space, just a few people can dance on it. What Chinzi didn't expect was that this project really existed here. Because Mommy handed over a brochure at this time, with various performances on it. And the corresponding price is marked on each program. For example, dance projects cost 50,000 Baileys. How about a dance to find out how you feel? Chinzi looked at Kaido and asked. Without thinking, Kaido agreed. Working out on the nerd boat every day, Kaido feels that watching performances is also a kind of relaxation. Then let's do this dance. Chinzi pointed to the dance in the booklet, then turned to Mommy and said. Then he took out 230,000 Baileys from the bag and handed it over. Okay. Reaching out to take Bailey, Mommy had a smile on her face, and stepped back after answering. Chinzi and Kaido in the room smiled at each other. Silence is better than sound. After a while, 3 women in long clothes came in from the door of the luxurious private room. Appearance is average, tall, visually more than 1.8 meters, in the world of pirates, this height can only be normal. Under Chinzi's gaze, the 3 geisha danced in small steps in the middle of the open space. The wide cuffs and skirts dance with the wind under the influence of their twisting postures. Like 3 butterflies, dancing lightly. Although Chinzi couldn't understand what they were doing in this dance, it gave people the feeling that it was very beautiful. At this moment, Chinzi raised his eyebrows looking at the three people dressed tightly. He has a bold idea. If you use observation haki, can you see through directly? After struggling with this idea in his mind for a while, Chinzi finally gave up. Because if you do this, the dance will lose its ornamental value. Just as Chinzi was watching silently, an abrupt voice came. How can there be no wine at this time? Kaido on the side watched the three beauties dancing in the middle, with an excited expression, suddenly thought of something, and shouted. Hearing this, Chinzi slapped his thigh. Yes, why did you forget this? After finishing speaking, Chinzi rang a small bell on the table. Not for a while, Mommy knocked on the door and walked in. Excuse me, what else do you need? Bring up your best wine and best food here. Chinzi waved his hand and said boldly. After Mommy left, after a while, several service staff brought drinks and food to Kaido and Chinzi. This tastes like shit, the food on the rocks is shit compared to this. As for the culinary skills of Long Bread, as well as being the head chef, the food made in any place is hundreds of times better than him. Kaido grabbed the leg of an unknown creature and took a big bite, mouth dripping with oil. Hearing this, the corners of Chinzi's mouth twitched. Eating food made from long bread with fruit power every day, of course, is shit. But Chinzi himself didn't feel much, because what he ate was always the private goods of Long Bread. While admiring the dancing of the three geisha, Chinzi and Kaido had a good time drinking and chatting. Suddenly, Chinzi seemed to sense something and frowned slightly. Turn on observation haki and explore the surrounding environment. Chinzi found that there were three men standing behind the wooden sliding door next to them, and judging from their aura, the visitors were not friendly. Immediately, Chinzi's mood became extremely bad. It's not because these people are plotting against themselves, but because they are plotting against themselves at this time. Chinzi was puzzled. Why every time I am at a critical moment, someone will come out to make trouble? But on the surface, Chinzi didn't show much emotion, he was still talking and laughing with Kaido. As time goes by, the three geisha finished their dance performance and retreated from the room. At this time, those people hiding outside the door also began to move around. Being able to brazenly stay outside the door for such a long time, it seems that he is probably with the people here. Stab. The sound of the wooden sliding door opening sounded, under the watchful eyes of Chinzi and Kaido. A total of 3 men walked in slowly, and sat on the small wooden platform at the side of the room by themselves. Seeing the 3 strange men who came in suddenly, Kaido looked at Chinzi with a confused face and said, "This is..." Hearing this, Chinzi spread his hands, expressing that I don't know anything. Ha ha ha, don't panic, you two. We just want to get to know you too. A man with thinning hair and a fleshy face glanced at the two of them and said slowly. Hearing this, Chinzi shook his head. Sorry, we are not interested, if there is nothing else, please leave. Chinzi's voice was very cold as ice cubes in an ice cellar. Hearing this, the leading man smiled and was not angry, but turned to look at Kaido and said, I wonder if you have the will. No, get out. Kaido can also see at this time, these 3 people are here to make trouble, unreserved Kaido. That's a pity. While speaking, the man walked up to Kaido with a regretful expression on his face. Suddenly, he changed the subject. Then if that's the case, you guys stay here today. While speaking, the dagger behind his back was held in his hand at some point, and stabbed towards Kaido's neck. Facing this unexpected blow, Chinzi at the side was horrified. He was not afraid of Kaido getting hurt, but he was afraid that his shot would be too heavy. Kaido, strike lightly. As soon as Chinzi's words were uttered, Kaido's work was over. Boom. There was a sound like a watermelon cracking, and the man's head was directly crushed by Kaido. Brains and blood splattered the room. Seeing this scene, Chinzi sighed, it seems that this time it will be ruined again. At the same time, the remaining 2 were completely shocked when they saw the scene in front of them. Not only because of the one-hit kill of his companion just now, but also because of what Chinzi said just now. Kaido. Is it the Kaido from the Rocks Pirates? The one with the bounty of 700 million. The man who was 5 meters tall said with a trembling voice. Hearing this, Chinzi shook his head again. Even this kind of guy dared to come out to seek money and murder. Thinking of the 8 men before, I can only say that the robbers in this place are too bad. Who else do you think would dare to call that name? Kaido wiped the blood splashed on his body and said coldly. Kaido is very angry now. No man can suppress his anger if he is disturbed at this time. So he shot without leaving any room, and directly shot out the brains of the person opposite him. Hearing Kaido's reply, the remaining 2 men directly knelt down, kowtowed and begged for mercy. The sound of forehead colliding with the floor continued to be heard. With such little strength, who gave you the courage to come out? Shinzi lost all interest at this time and spoke. Actually, we were forced. We were all pirates before, but we were caught later. We have been doing things for him. The man quickly explained. Hearing this, Shinzi frowned and said, "Who is this guy? No, we don't know what his name is. We are just completing the task he gave us." The man kneeling on the ground, Kaido. "So why are you thinking about us? Shinzi must clarify this matter today. Because the guests in this private room will all be our prey." Hearing the man's words, Shinzi was taken aback, because he had chosen a luxurious private room. So it's really reasonable to carry out indiscriminate attacks. Because anyone who can afford this private room must be rich. As for the person who was killed, his organs are sold to the underground world. Then make a profit. The man had completely lost the idea of resistance, and just wanted to survive, so he told the whole thing. Hearing this, Shinzi's complexion was extremely ugly. Where is this flower shop? It is simply a black shop. Not only murder for money, but also be killed at the waist after death. It turns out that the personal safety that the bunny girl mentioned earlier refers to this. Is there any more? Shinzi continued to ask. I know the person who ordered me, he is very powerful, and the weapon he uses is an umbrella. The rest I really don't know. The man's tone was full of fear, and he spoke. Shinzi nodded and didn't speak any more. Next moment, in this room, there were 2 more corpses. At the same time, in a bar, a tall, thin man was sitting at a bar, drinking alone. His white hair was braided into 2 braids hanging down his shoulders, and he was wearing a rose-red shirt and blood-red trousers. Wearing a large blood-red cloak. The inside is plaid and has a blue rose around the neck. On his side, stood a slender umbrella with a bat handle. It looks very classy and full of heroic spirit. At this time, 3 tall men came to the side of the door. I saw them looking around the bar for a week, and they took a fancy to where the man was sitting. Seeing his attire and his tall and thin figure, the 3 felt that he was a bully. Hey, boy, we've taken this seat, you can get out now. Quote, quote. The 3 men sat across from the tall and thin man, and said with vicious faces. Hearing this, the man smiled charmingly. Next moment. Brush. A sword light flashed across, leaving an undetectable scratch on the necks of the 3 men at the same time. I don't understand any manners at all. The tall and thin man pouted. Then he dropped a bill on the table and walked outside. Boom. The moment the man turned around, the bodies of the 3 men fell straight at the same time, bleeding all over the ground. What? The people who saw this scene screamed immediately. The whole bar was in a mess. Both the guests and the waiters were frightened and rushed out of the bar. The man walked to the door and looked up in one direction. It is the location of Hongyu Flower Shop. When Shinzi and Kaido beheaded the 3 men, he had already noticed the situation over there. Under his top-level observation haki, none of that can escape his perception. Kaido, 700 million pele. Interesting, the man whispered in a voice that only he could hear. But when he was about to turn around and leave, several Marines rushed in. Seeing this person's appearance, he immediately shouted in horror. Balorik Redfield, can this continue? At the Red Moon Flower Shop, Kaido looked at Shinzi and said slowly. Continue to fart. This place is full of blood. And it's not over yet. The mastermind behind these people is about to appear. Shinzi looked up into the distance and said slowly. Under the perception of his observation haki, a person is approaching here quickly. From the aura on his body, it can be felt that the strength of the enemy is very strong. Let's go, Shinzi said. There will inevitably be a battle in the future, and there will be no tricks here. While talking, Shinzi and Kaido came to an area with a wider view, and folded their hands in front of their chests, waiting for each other. After a while, a red afterimage passed in front of the 2 of them. The thin and tall man stood in front of Chinzi and Kaido. At the first sight of him appearing, Chinzi recognized him. Balorik Redfield, also known as Lonely Red. Lonely Red, Lonely Kabukicho, no wonder it sounds so familiar. Chinzi propped his chin and thought in his mind. He really didn't expect that the person behind this would be him. In the original One Piece, although he did not appear in the main drama, this did not affect his reputation in the slightest. Lonely Red has always hated forming alliances with others, and implements loneliness as her creed. It is neck and neck with Roger and Whitebeard alone. The strength is extremely powerful. Because he admired Brooks since he was a child, he became a pirate when he grew up. During the Summit War, he escaped from prison while Blackbeard attacked Impel Down, and later got the Bat Fruit. Such a strong man is actually doing such a thing here. You are the master of those three trash. It looks like I can't even take a stick. Seeing the appearance of Lonely Red, Kaido sneered. In his opinion, this person is someone who can be solved with a stick, not much better than the previous three. Kaido, a crew member of the Rocks Pirates, has a bounty of 700 million Baileys. I didn't expect to meet a big fat sheep today. Hearing Kaido's words, Lonely Red smiled charmingly, and said Jia Jia. Although Ji Yu Gao Zihong has a withdrawn personality and doesn't like dealing with people, it doesn't mean he doesn't like money. The purpose of catching those pirates before was to make money for him. And that solitary red Kabukicho can also generate huge profits for it every year, even though he took this place by force. But this does not affect the money into his pocket. But this time, he was able to meet a big pirate with a bounty of 700 million, of course he would not miss it. Kaido heard that the man actually knew him, and uttered wild words, saying that he was a big fat sheep. He couldn't help being slightly taken aback, and then laughed out loud. It seems that you know a lot. But since you know I'm Kaido and you're still so confident, should I say you're arrogant or stupid? Although in the Rocks Pirates, I was overwhelmed by those captains, especially the monster Chinzi. But that doesn't mean he's weak. You know, the Rocks Pirates assembled the most powerful pirates in the world. Even so, Kaido was a budding figure among these people before. And after eating Yuyu fruit, his strength skyrocketed a lot. If you say that you can defeat someone if you meet anyone outside, Kaido will not believe it. Jia ha 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 ha. You'll know if you try it. Lonely Red smiled charmingly, and said slowly. Kaido, I leave this person to you. Come on. At this time, Chinzi also spoke. After eating Yuyu fruit, Chinzi was also curious about Kaido's strength and how far he has grown. And he really needs a battle to train himself. So in this battle, he needs it very much. Hearing this, Kaido smiled. Right on my mind. At this time, Kaido was full of fighting spirit, and this was his first fight after eating Yuyu fruit. He is not very clear about the strength of the opponent. Although he has been contemptuous of the opposite party, mocking him as a small character with trashy strength. But Kaido doesn't think so in his heart. When he appeared before, Kaido could see that his strength was extraordinary. But even so, Kaido doesn't think the opponent is really stronger than himself. Stepping aside, Kaido took off the coat worth 2 million Baileys and put it on the ground. Hold the mace tightly in the palm of your hand and look directly at each other. Eyes on each other, the battle is imminent. Kaido's aura suddenly soared. Although he has not awakened Conqueror's Haki, he is still strong. Around Kaido's body, the entrained air flow spread outward. Next moment, I saw Kaido kicking his legs and feet vigorously, and using the momentum, he attacked Lonely Red. Huge body, but the speed is not slow at all, like a sledgehammer being swung out. In the blink of an eye, he came in front of Lonely Red. The mace in his hand had already been raised high at this moment, and he was about to smash it down when he charged up. Sudden, Lonely Red seems to know Kaido's attack trajectory. 1 second before the mace was about to hit him. With a strange turn of the body, Kaido's attack failed perfectly. The dark mace hit the ground directly. Boom. There was a huge sound, as if a shell had exploded on the ground. A large pit appeared on the ground, gravel flew around, and dust rose. And at the moment when Kaido's moves fell through, with Lonely Red's right arm, holding a slender umbrella with a bat handle, he swiped lightly towards the front. Puff. Single quote. A muffled sound came out. The next moment, Kaido's body flew upside down, hit the ground and rolled several times. Kaido's body stopped when a huge rock was torn apart. At this moment, there was a wound on Kaido's body, blood was flowing. With this strong physique, Lonely Red's blow only cut Kaido's skin, and did not hurt the internal organs. But it also shows the power of this random blow. You know, although Kaido's physique is not as good as Shinzi's, he is still a leader among the Rock's pirates. After eating Yu fruit, it was even upgraded to a higher level. But it was still easily broken by Lonely Red. The attack power of that umbrella is not weaker than that of a sharp sword. You are stronger than I thought. Lonely Red saw that his frontal blow left only a shallow wound on Kaido's body, and said in surprise. You're not bad either, Kaido said lightly. His face became more serious. Seeing the first confrontation between Lonely Red and Kaido on the field, Shinzi frowned slightly. Lonely Red, a great swordsman who uses an umbrella as a sword, can open mountains and crack rocks with the power of raising his hand at will. But compared to this, what makes Shinzi more interesting is 1 second before Kaido's attack, Lonely Red's actions seemed to be predicted. This is the means that observation haki can only have after training to ultimate. It is mentioned in the original book that Lonely Red has a powerful observation haki since she was a child, which can see through people's hearts. Because he was used to seeing the ugly hearts of the people around him, he was extremely tired of dealing with human beings and developed a withdrawn personality. When used in combat, it is possible to use the special sound from the opponent's body to predict the opponent's next move and position. Referred to as prediction. Amidst the smoke and dust, Kaido stood up. No blood flowed from the wound on his body. His eyes narrowed, and the mace looked even darker under the sunlight. That is the externalized use of armament haki. Thunder 8 trigrams. I saw Kaido let out a low cry, his feet slammed on the ground, and the rumbling sound spread on the surface. Next moment, Kaido's body disappeared in place, and burst into the sky with the sound of howling wind. On the ground, cracks continuously spread outward, like spider webs. The next moment, Kaido's figure appeared behind Lonely Red. The huge mace smashed towards Lonely Red's head with a violent aura. However, under the mace, his face was calm and lonely, and a wicked smile suddenly flashed at the corner of his mouth. Next moment, I saw that he didn't make any unnecessary movements, and his body lightly swept to the left. Boom! A voice several times louder than before came out, deafening. The sound was not only transmitted on this battlefield, but also echoed on the entire Flower Street. Like thunder, some pedestrians walking on the street stopped at this moment, with puzzled expressions on their faces. What happened just now scared me. What's that sound? Is it thundering? Did you hear that too? I thought I was hallucinating. I don't know, but I'm sure it's not thunder, it seems to be in that direction. Quote, the voice just now is definitely not simple. In one house, a Marine wearing a Marine uniform with 2 large letters of justice emblazoned on the back coat said. The badge on his clothes shows his position, Colonel. Beside him, there were more than 30 Marine soldiers standing. He just heard the news that Lonely Red had appeared in the bar, so he immediately called the Marine soldiers together. At this moment, when he heard the loud noise, he frowned. Go and investigate what's going on. On the battlefield, Kaido's mace missed again. This time his attack was much stronger than before in terms of speed and strength. But it was still easily dodged by Lonely Red. And as if he had eyes behind him, he easily dodged the mace a second before it touched him. This made Kaido wonder. He had never encountered such an opponent before, as if he had seen through his actions completely. Boy, don't be distracted during the battle. Suddenly, a soft voice rang in Kaido's ear. Lonely Red has come before him. Hearing this, Kaido was shocked. Before he had time to think, he quickly picked up the mace that was stuck in the ground, and swung it back violently. However, when Lonely Red said that, she knew that Kaido would do the same next step. The body sank down, and the bat umbrella in his hand swiped towards Kaido's bottom. At the tip of the umbrella, a cold light suddenly appeared. The sound of sharp knives piercing into flesh came. Kaido's body flew upside down again. Boom! A figure like an iron tower drew an arc in the air, and slammed heavily into an abandoned low building in the distance. Immediately, houses collapsed and smoke filled the air. At this time, in the battlefield, the Marines also rushed here. Colonel Marine, the leader, recognized Lonely Red the first time he saw him. I was shocked in my heart. He didn't expect that he, who was killing people in the bar before, would appear here at this time. He quickly ordered his soldiers to hide. He understands that with the opponent's strength, all of them, including himself, can only end in seconds. He looked to the other side, a man wearing a mask, who seemed ordinary. Judging from the tragic scene on the field and the loud noise just now, he quickly judged that there was a battle here just now. And it's not over yet. Because he followed the line of sight in Lonely Red, and found that there was a sound coming from a ruin in the distance. Boom! A piercing sound came. A huge figure soared into the sky, carrying tiles that were thrown out by brute force. Like a fired shell, it flew across the sky. Next moment, the huge figure landed on the battlefield. Kaido. The moment the colonel saw this figure, he couldn't help but exclaimed. The crew of the Rocks pirates actually appeared here. And now it seems to be fighting against Lonely Red. Quick, recorder. Such a scene must be recorded, and the details of the battle must be clearly described. Report to Naval Headquarters, and it will save a lot of effort when arresting in the future. At this time, with Kaido on the field, his feet sank into the ground. The moment it landed, the ground simply couldn't bear the huge force. On his thigh, blood was still oozing out. This is the result of Lonely Red's sword just now. You can see through my movements. Kaido stared at Lonely Red and spoke. After these few fights, Kaido can be sure that the opponent has already seen his actions clearly when he made a shot. Because only in this way can he explain why every time he attacks, he can be easily dodged, and without any unnecessary movements, it is clean and neat. If you don't know what to do, you will definitely not be able to do this. Ha ha ha, you look like a dumbass, so you're not stupid. Seeing that Kaido saw his ability, Lonely Red smiled evilly. But there was no panic on his face. Because even if you could see it, so what? Is it possible to defeat yourself just by doing this? That's tantamount to a fool's dream. Moreover, Kaido is destined to die in his hands today, after playing with Kaido first. Cut off his head and give it to the watching Marines. Thinking of this, Lonely Red raised her eyes and glanced at Marine's hidden position. Immediately, the Marines felt a chill in their hearts. Did Lonely Red take a look here just now? We seem to have been discovered. Impossible, we are so far away and completely concealed. He just glanced at it randomly. Stop talking, watch it carefully, and remember it well. The Marines were a little panicked when they saw that Lonely Red seemed to be looking this way, and said in a low voice. But they didn't mean to retreat at all. In such a battle, even if they risked their lives, they had to bring the information back. Dozens of pairs of eyes stared at the three of them, continuing to pay attention to the situation on the field. Follow their line of sight. At this time, Kaido's thigh wound has stopped, and the blood has stopped flowing. Sudden, Kaido raised his head slightly, his eyes burst into light, and his aura burst out suddenly. The double horns on the head are undergoing certain changes, growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The forehead, arms, and thighs all turned blue at this time. See this scene. Colonel Marine frowned slightly, and reached for the binoculars. In the round mirror frame, his eyes slowly enlarged. Those are cyan scales. At this time, Kaido's body is covered with blue scales. Like fish scales, but also like dragon scales. I didn't expect that. You are still demon fruit power. Lonely Red raised her eyebrows slightly when she saw the mutated Kaido in front of her eyes. It can produce symptoms that can only appear in other animals in the human body. There is only one possible explanation. Devil fruit. And its zones. However, based on such a few changes, Lonely Red couldn't tell what kind it was. Just as surprised as him was Shinzi, who had been on the sidelines. He didn't expect that Kaido would be able to show the orc form within less than a month of taking Yu fruit. The degree of fit between this fruit and Kaido is higher than he imagined. It's just that Kaido's orc form should still be in its infancy, because his only changes are scales and double horns. The tail hasn't grown out yet. There is still a big difference from the appearance shown in the original anime. I don't know what devil fruit is. Lonely Red looked at Kaido and continued. He was curious about the name of the fruit Kaido ate, which made him feel very interesting. But he still didn't panic at all. Even if the opponent showed the fruit ability, he didn't think he could fight with himself. I'll tell you after you're dead, Kaido said coldly. The voice just fell. His standing figure disappeared. A big hole was left on the ground, earth and rocks splashed, and the rocks collapsed. He had already swept towards Lonely Red. Kaido at this moment, whether it is speed or strength, has been upgraded to a higher level. Zhong Sanshi Yin Naraku. With Kaido's loud shout, the mace in his hand spun rapidly, covering armament Haki's iron rod, like an iron wall at this moment. Keep hitting down. In an instant, it has already come to the front of Lonely Red. However, in the next moment, unexpectedly, the sound of weapons handover came out. A red figure leapt up the moment before Kaido attacked. And below him, it happened to be Kaido rushing over. The next moment, the corners of Lonely Red's mouth rose slightly, and the bat umbrella in his hand chopped down. A sword energy shining with fiery light shot out, carrying terrifying power and approaching Kaido below him. At this time, Kaido seemed to sense something. His brows were furrowed. The mace that was spinning in his hand was thrown upwards suddenly. Clang! The sound of cutting metal came out, extremely piercing. The Marines in the distance frowned and quickly covered their ears with their hands. In my mind, there were still ringing in the ears. At the moment of the collision, a gust of air swept outwards, making Chin Zi's clothes rustle. And the mace that was thrown out by Kaido was also sent flying at this time. It landed on a clearing in the distance, smashing a deep hole. And Kaido also flew out at this time. Under Chin Zi's gaze, Kaido's body drew a residual line in the air, and landed right next to the mace. Boom! A cloud of dust was kicked up on the ground. The moment Lone Gao Zihong slashed out the sword energy, he made another slash. Kaido, whose weapon has been thrown by him, has nothing to stop him. You can only use the arms covered with armament colors to cross in front of you. As the dust settled, Kaido stood up. The mace that flew out was also held in his hand at this time. The blood on the arm flowed from the gaps in the scales. This time, Kaido didn't treat the wound on his arm, and let the blood drip down continuously. Looking up at the opponent not far away, Kaido can't see the slightest fear in his eyes, only a raging fighting spirit. He knew that the person in front of him was much stronger than he imagined. But so what? Taking a deep breath, Kaido's momentum exploded again. The arms suddenly swelled in a circle. King Kong Dysprosium. As the sound sounded, I saw Kaido frantically waving the iron rod in his hand. More than a dozen columnar sticks formed in an instant. Next second, carrying the heat wave, the transparent aura flew away quickly. The target is directed at the Lonely Red. Your attack seems to be quite powerful. Lonely Red felt the oncoming breath of destruction. His eyes narrowed slightly. Next moment, his figure moved. Brush. Like a ghost, Lonely Red perfectly dodges all stick energy. The bat umbrella in his hand swung to the left. Clang. There was a sound of metal colliding. Still want to engage in a sneak attack? Lonely Red smiled contemptuously. Before, Kaido waved the mace in his hand at the moment of sticking out, and came to Lonely Red's side. Because Kaido knows that it is impossible to hit the opponent with only one attack. Only with continuous attacks can it be possible to find a flaw. But the idea was good, but it turned out to be blocked by an umbrella. Because Lonely Red started the moment he moved. He had already predicted his actions. Whether it was the long-distance attack, or the close-up attack at this moment. It's all under his control. And Kaido saw that his mace was caught by his opponent. Without the slightest hesitation, the kick swept towards the opponent. But the next moment, his posture hovered in midair. Because an umbrella was touching his thigh right now. His legs were in front of Lonely Red, and he couldn't get even half a point. Moments before Kaido's attack, Lonely Red took out her umbrella and stabbed at it. Boom! A dull sound came out, and Kaido's body backed up again and again. On his thigh, a deep bone-deep wound appeared impressively. The blood instantly stained the entire trousers red. However, Kaido, who stabilized his figure, did not have the slightest intention of retreating. It's like feeling no pain. With a sinking body, he swooped down and ran towards Lonely Red. At the same time, the mace was constantly waving, and the strong wind whistled. For a while, the two figures kept interlacing in the battlefield. One kept approaching forward, his aura was extremely fierce, and his movements were fierce. One kept retreating, the wind was light and the clouds were calm, and the umbrella in his hand stabbed forward from time to time. I appreciate you a little bit now. Lonely Red is dealing with Kaido's indiscriminate bombardment, and at the moment there is still leisurely teasing. Because although Kaido's attack is fierce, but none of his moves can hit him. Instead, on Kaido, as Lonely Red's umbrella continued to protrude, new wounds continued to appear. What a pity. You still have to die. Lonely Red's voice was very soft, like a whisper, but the words she spoke were extremely cold. Next moment, I saw his right wrist suddenly turned over. Brush. The bat umbrella shot out a dazzling light, and even the air became distorted. Kaido, who was still waving a mace, was shocked when he saw this. Hastily used the mace to resist the sword energy. Boom. Accompanied by a loud noise, Kaido's body flew upside down tens of meters away. Under the effect of inertia, pushing all the way horizontally, a flat land of tens of meters was created in the distance. The mace also left his hand at this time and fell aside. However, it's not over yet. Next moment, Lonely Red moved. Holding an umbrella and swooping directly towards Kaido, only an afterimage can be seen in the air. In an instant, he came to Kaido. The bat umbrella in his hand slashed towards Kaido's neck. At this time, he was tired of playing and was about to end. Sudden, he seemed to sense something. He frowned, without any hesitation. Brush. The body exploded back 10 meters directly. Beside Kaido, Shinzi loomed. The fist in his hand was still hovering in midair in a daze. Whispering in words only you can hear. It will predict. It's really good. Looking down at Kaido who was lying on the ground vomiting blood, he shook his head. It's not that Shinzi likes to watch the show by the side, but because of Kaido. This battle can stimulate the fighting spirit buried in his heart. Otherwise, its potential will remain unfulfilled in the future. In a worse case, even Conqueror's Haki may not be able to awaken in the future. So until the moment of life and death, Shinzi will not make a move. Unexpectedly, there are masters. Lonely Red was standing 10 meters away, looking at Shinzi, and said evilly. The moment he attacked Kaido. Then he sensed that someone was rushing towards him. Its speed and strength are very strong, and it is a stronger opponent than Kaido. In order to ensure their own safety, he immediately chose to retreat. After all, he had to know the details of the enemy before he could know how to defeat him better. I don't know your name. Lonely Red continued. He was curious about Shinzi's identity. He knew that the one who could be with Kaido must be a member of the Rocks Pirates. But the people of the pirate group, he didn't know many people at all. So you can't tell just by looking at it. You don't know who I am. But I know exactly who you are. The great swordsman's alone Red, Valoric Redfield. Shinzi's voice was very soft, but it was very heavy in Lonely Red's ears. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect you to know my name so clearly. Looks like I'm not familiar with the Rocks Pirates. Shinzi was able to call out his own name directly, and seemed to know himself very well, which was a little surprising. Not familiar, but I know you well, that's enough. Shinzi said lightly. The outgoing voice was soft, blown away by the breeze. Just like Shinzi who disappeared in place at this time. Chapter 91. Kaido lost. The Lonely Red won too easily. His strength is even stronger than what Marine assessed. Who is that masked person? It doesn't seem so useless. Should be a member of the Rocks Pirates. Don't worry about these things for now. Clear the records of Kaido's situation and Lonely Red. Lonely Red. Not just a great swordsman, but also the ability to predict the opponent's movements and positions. Kaido, demon fruit power, with fish scales on his body, can change into orc form. Marine, who had been watching the fight from a distance, saw Kaido's defeat at this moment, and started discussing in a low voice. During this battle, they saw a lot of information that Naval Headquarters has not yet discovered. For example, Lonely Red's special ability, Kaido ate devil fruit. This information is extremely important to Marine. After Kaido's failure, the man who had been on the sidelines also became their key observation object at this moment. At first I thought it was just an ordinary little character, but I didn't expect that its strength seems to be stronger than Kaido. On the field, the moment Shinzi disappeared, he raised his legs and swept towards Lonely Red's face. The crackling sound of the air continued to come from the trajectory of Shinzi's kicks. So fast, Lonely Red couldn't help sighing at this moment. This speed and strength are not at the same level as Kaido. Next moment, Shinzi's legs directly penetrated Lonely Red's body. However, unexpectedly, there was no sound of a strong blow. Is afterimage. Shinzi frowned slightly, and immediately realized. At this time, Shinzi observation haki is fully open. He found that behind 10 meters away from him, Lonely Red was standing there leisurely holding a bat umbrella. You're really fast, but it's no use. Because your attack is ineffective against me, you can't hit me. Lonely Red smiled charmingly. When Shinzi raised his leg, he already knew his next attack. He chose the position in advance, and dodged at a high speed. However, in the next moment, his expression stopped abruptly. Because the moment Shinzi realized the afterimage, he turned around and rushed towards him without the slightest hesitation. Even faster than before, in the strong airflow, Shinzi's mask was blown off at this moment and fell aside. The next moment, Shinzi came to Lonely Red. Boom! There was a loud sound, no less than a cannonball being detonated. Shinzi's fist hit the ground, leaving a big hole on the ground. Immediately, rocks splashed at a speed like bullets being fired, constantly destroying the surrounding environment. Still missed. Shinzi looked at the huge pothole in front of him and shook his head. On the other side, Lonely Red's body fell straight down, and his face was no longer as calm as before. So fast, faster than before, he spoke. If it wasn't for being able to predict Shinzi's movements, he would definitely not be able to avoid this move. Even knowing where Shinzi is going to attack. But due to his speed, it is a bit difficult for Lonely Red to dodge. Shinzi, who found Lonely Red's position, turned his head slightly and looked up. And the moment he turned his head, Marine, who had been watching from a distance, exploded. Shinzi, that person seems to be Shinzi. A Marine soldier said in a terrified tone, even his voice was trembling. Are you crazy? Hearing what the soldier said, Colonel Marine cursed. If this is Shinzi, he will give you all the brows. After glaring at the man, he picked up the binoculars in his hand and looked at the thin figure. Immediately, the colonel's originally slightly speechless expression suddenly changed. At this moment, his face is full of shock, his eyes are wide open, and it seems that he can't even fit the frame of the mirror. It's really Shinzi. How could this Shinzi who killed the celestial dragons and defeated the Zephyr Vice Admiral, who existed in other people's rumors, be here? And also met by himself. He couldn't believe it right now. But as Colonel Marine, he immediately reacted from the shock, and now is not the time to investigate the cause. Taking a deep breath, he suppressed the emotions in his heart. Quick, send a few people back now and report the situation here. The rest of the people continued to observe here with me. Are you Shinzi? At this time, the Lonely Red, with twinkling eyes, asked doubtfully. From Marine's conversation just now, he learned that the person in front of him was called Shinzi. Seeing Shinzi's turned face at this moment, he was even more convinced of what they said. I said, why do you look so familiar? So you are Shinzi. Lonely Red continued to say that the other party didn't need to answer, he could be sure of it. Before that, he had heard of Shinzi. After all, after killing the celestial dragons and repelling the Zephyr of the naval headquarters, it is difficult not to be famous in this sea area. And I saw him in a reward order. But I can't remember it all the time, after all, I just glanced at it. However, after hearing the name at this moment, I suddenly remembered it. Oh, I didn't expect you to know me. Shinzi smiled and said. Lonely Red already knew what he looked like before. After all, under his observation haki, the mask was useless. But I didn't recognize it at first, but now I recognize it. It made Shinzi feel a bit abrupt. Ha ha ha, it's hard not to know what you did. Lonely Red said with a smile. Glancing at Shinzi, he spoke again. Since you are Shinzi, how about we stop? Lonely Red knows how powerful Shinzi is. This is the captain of the Rocks Pirates, the one who defeated Zephyr. He didn't need to fight desperately with such a person for money. Besides, in the confrontation just now, I didn't take much advantage. Hearing Lonely Red's words, Shinzi was taken aback, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. No, without even thinking about it, Shinzi directly rejected his peace talks. Just now Kaido was beaten like this, and I was the captain, but because of someone else's words, I just let him go. Then how will Shinzi behave in the Rocks Pirates in the future, and how can he brag in his own team? How to convince Kaido to himself. And I also need to fight to improve myself. After all, counting the time, the Battle of the Valley of the Gods is coming soon. Hearing that Shinzi directly rejected him, his lonely red face suddenly became gloomy. It seems that there is nothing to talk about. Do you think you're going to eat me? Knowing that peaceful negotiations are impossible, Lonely Red smiled charmingly. Matched with his gloomy face, it was extremely weird. Next second, brush, he held the right arm of the umbrella and swiped forward. A huge sword energy shot out from the handle of Lonely Red's umbrella. Under the sunlight, it is dazzling. Carrying terrifying power, pointing at Shinzi. Facing the huge sword energy coming towards him at a high speed, Shinzi raised his eyebrows slightly. Without the slightest intention of giving in, he clenched his right fist and just swung forward at will. Boom! There was a loud noise and a white light suddenly appeared. The huge sword energy exploded at this time, carrying a powerful white light blade, and slashed in all directions. The ground was torn apart, surrounding trees and rocks exploded one after another, sawdust and stones flying in the air. At the place of the collision, a pothole with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared. And at the very center, Shinzi stood proudly at the moment. The corners of the clothes on his body fluttered with the wind, and he didn't look embarrassed at all. Such a random punch directly tore up the sword energy. The sound that comes out is even louder than thunder. Looking at the scene after the fight, it's horrible. Is this really the power that humans can unleash? I've always heard that Shinzi, the great pirate, has terrifying strength, but I never thought it would be so exaggerated. It seems to be much stronger than what Naval Headquarters said. Quote. The Marines who saw this scene were shocked at the moment. They have always known that Shinzi is powerful, otherwise, he wouldn't be a headache for the world government. But when you actually see it with your own eyes, it feels completely different. Because it is even scarier than the rumors. It is simply a monster. A blow from a great swordsman was actually shattered by his breezy punch, which seemed to refresh their three views. And the one with the same expression as the Marines was Shinzi's opponent at this time, Lonely Red. The sword energy he just used, not to mention using all his strength, but at least 70% was used. However, it had no effect on Shinzi at all, and was directly crushed by a punch. If this move hits Kaido just now, it will definitely be fatal or injured. As expected of a pirate who dared to kill celestial dragons, it really opened my eyes. Lonely Red looked at Shinzi who was standing in the big pit, and said sincerely. The thing that opened your eyes is still behind. While speaking, Shinzi jumped out of the pothole. Standing outside the circle, Shinzi looked at his right hand. The sword energy just now left no trace on his fist at all. The strength has improved a lot. Shinzi murmured in a low voice. Compared with the last battle with the Golden Lion, Shinzi also tore the sword energy with his hands. But at that time, Shinzi's fists didn't hold back at all, and he went through them with all his strength. But now, when he was facing the slash of the great swordsman, Lonely Red, a random punch was blocked. And there is still room to spare. You know, Shinzi didn't even use armament hockey. I have to say that the progress during this period is very huge. Come on, continue. Shinzi didn't seem to be satisfied. He hooked his fingers towards Jiu Gao Zihong, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and said slowly. Facing Shinzi's ridicule, Lonely Red's face was gloomy, as if dripping water. The bat umbrella in his hand slowly opened. Since you're looking for death, there's no way to hide. Next moment, I saw the momentum on his body rising continuously, and there was an air current sweeping around his body. Blow it around and roll up the dust all over the ground. Like a cyclone, all of a sudden, Lonely Red let out a low snort. Half Moon Slash. As the sound fell, his body jumped up. A purple sword aura that looked like half a moon and a half burst out of the air. Brush. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Shinzi. As if ignoring the distance. Seeing the destructive aura blowing towards his face, Shinzi narrowed his eyes. This power is much stronger than before, but it's not enough. There is no meaning of evasion at all. While speaking, Shinzi's fist went up to meet him. Boom. This moment, The purple light exploded, and the power was overwhelming, comparable to the collapse of a mountain, shaking the world. Under such power, everything is collapsing. The aftermath of the eruption spread in all directions. Push everything across. Immediately, where Qinzi and Lonely Red stood. Within a radius of 100 meters, there was no grass growing, and it was in ruins. And Qinzi, it was still just that simple punch, which tore all the sword energy into pieces. Let the dust settle. Qinzi stood in the original position without moving at all, his fist was still in the posture of punching. Seeing the Lonely Red in this scene, I was shocked in my heart. In that move just now, he had already used all his strength, and he didn't hold back even half of it. But even so, he was blocked by Qinzi. And there seems to be no sign of difficulty at all. Not to mention the wound, even the position can't be shaken by half. Looking up, Qinzi's eyes narrowed, locked on the Lonely Red. Step down with your right foot, and the ground explodes directly. Qinzi's body flew straight towards him. However, seeing this, Lonely Red narrowed her eyes slightly, as she had expected this for a long time. The moment Qinzi pounced on him, he fled into the distance. But Qinzi, who also turned on observation haki, is always aware of his position. As long as he appears, Qinzi would throw a punch at it directly, although every attack would eventually miss. During this period, Qinzi also bombarded the sword energy emitted by Lonely Red from time to time. In a hidden corner, the Marines were amazed at what happened on the field. From their perspective, Qinzi and Lonely Red seemed to be playing hide and seek at the moment. However, compared to ordinary people's hide and seek, the speed of the two is so fast that it is difficult for their eyes to catch them. In a matter of seconds, Qinzi and Lonely Red flickered a dozen times at different locations. Because in their view, the movements of the two are the same as teleportation. The trajectory of the movement is completely invisible, only the afterimage of the moment when it stopped. And except for the contest of speed. In this battlefield, Qinzi's observation haki and Lonely Red's observation haki. They are also constantly competing secretly. You really are as slippery as a loach. Qinzi was a little speechless, this Lonely Red couldn't beat him at all. But I can't beat him myself. He has never encountered such a difficult opponent, like a loach in his hand, he can beat it. But couldn't catch it. I said, your efforts are wasted, you can't hit me. Lonely Red smiled charmingly. Who knows, let's continue. The voice just fell. His figure flew out again, the target was still Lonely Red. Qinzi's idea is very simple, since he can always dodge and advance, then he will keep chasing. Physically wear down the opponent. When Lonely Red exhausted his physical strength, he knew where he was going to attack him. Because of lack of physical strength, he will still be unable to escape. When Qinzi was thinking like this, he fought dozens of times with Lonely Red. In the process, Qinzi's observation haki has been capturing the location of Lonely Red. Sudden, Qinzi felt that his observation haki seemed to be different. It is more precise and has a larger range. This is observation haki breaks through to a high level. Observation haki has broken through to a high level, which means that it has the ability to predict the future. Qinzi chose to stop attacking Lonely Red at this time. He stands upright, eyes closed, and observation haki, which covers the entire battlefield, seems to be solidified. Incomparably clear. Everything around here, like the files being transferred from the computer, is continuously transmitted to Qinzi's mind. The five senses have become extremely sharp at this time, which has risen to a higher level than before. Even the sound of Marines breathing in the distance can be heard clearly. In Qinzi's ear, everything is under control. Lonely Red, who fell to the side, looked at Qinzi at this moment, and saw that he suddenly stopped attacking, and couldn't help frowning. He didn't know what Qinzi was doing, but he guessed that he must be holding back some big moves, so he couldn't take it lightly. Sudden, Qinzi felt it. Not only everything around here now, but also the picture in the next second. This is a new ability of observation haki, which reads 1 second ahead. And this second is enough. In an instant, Qinzi moved. When the toes touched the ground suddenly exploded, and a deep pit with a diameter of tens of meters appeared, and dense cracks spread to the surroundings. Brush. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Lonely Red. But Qinzi's attack did not fall. Instead, he locked a position in his 2 o'clock direction in advance. The one in front of me is an afterimage. Call out. The moment Lonely Red fled to that position, Chin-Zi's figure had already arrived, kicking down with his whip leg. And when Lonely Red just landed on this position, then he sensed Chin-Zi's extremely fast speed, and the calf with afterimages would sweep towards his face. Immediately, his expression changed, and he quickly fled in another direction. Seeing this, Chin-Zi just sneered. The whip leg didn't go down to complete the attack, because he had predicted it again. At 8 o'clock, the figure of Lonely Red will appear there. Chin-Zi is very clear that it is impossible to succeed once. Because when he predicted his position, Lonely Red must also predict his position. So he needs to use the speed of continuous improvement, and this second of foreknowledge to match Lonely Red's ability of knowledge and knowledge. Not for a while, the figures of the two intertwined dozens of times on the battlefield. During this process, Lonely Red felt more and more difficult. Every time he falls into a position, Chin-Zi's figure will approach him in advance. Then I need to escape again. And with each appearance, the closer to the back, the closer Chin-Zi's figure is to his foothold. 6 o'clock direction. Chin-Zi, who was still chasing after, had this image pop up in his mind without the slightest hesitation. Clenching his fists, the figure flew directly to that position. And in this process, Lonely Red has already landed in this direction. However, when he just fell, he saw a fist the size of a sandbag slowly enlarging in front of his eyes. He sensed Chin-Zi's attack, but it was too late to dodge. Suddenly, I was terrified. Boom! A dull sound came out. It was the sound of physical contact. A red figure, like a thrown cannonball, flew straight in the air. Boom! He hit a clod of soil, penetrated directly, and the earth and rocks splashed, but his figure did not stagnate in the slightest. After colliding with several abandoned buildings in the air, it barely stopped. At this time, Lonely Red's face was covered with blood, the red robe was torn, and the 2 braids disappeared. Her hair was hanging loose on her shoulders, and blood was still spitting out of her mouth. She was extremely embarrassed. Now that he looks like this, even if his mother is here, he won't recognize her. Standing up, Lonely Red looked at Chin-Zi in the distance. Although blood was already dripping on his face, it was through his eyes. But his shock could still be seen. Because in his growth experience, no one has really hit himself in the head. Think back to the battle just now, Chin-Zi's initial performance, and the subsequent performance. He suddenly thought of one thing. Every position I took just now seemed to be predicted by Chin-Zi in advance. This is his unique ability to predict the future. Could it be that Chin-Zi also has the ability to predict the future? But why not use it in the first place? Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. Chin-Zi realized this ability in the process of fighting with himself. In other words, his observation haki has broken through to a high level. Thinking of this, Lonely Red's pupils shrank suddenly, and shock and fear welled up in his heart at the same time. He felt that he might die here today. He had been punched just now, and his body was already seriously injured. If he was punched again, he would definitely die on the spot. And Chin-Zi with such ability, the second punch will come soon. These thoughts flashed instantly in Lonely Red's mind. Run! Without any hesitation, Lonely Red turned around and was about to flee into the distance. But how could Chin-Zi let him go? The moment he got up, Chin-Zi moved and chased after him. And Lonely Red also knew that Chin-Zi would come over to make up for her. I saw him exhausting all his strength, and when he turned his hand, a huge sword chi slashed out. The target was not Chin-Zi, but Kaido, who was sitting on the ground at this time. Kaido, who just got up, seemed to feel something at this moment, and turned his head to look. A sword chi carrying a destructive aura was rushing towards his face. Kaido shouted with wide eyes. There are no words to describe his mood at this time, only these 2 words. As soon as he got up, he saw such a terrifying scene, no one could stand it. Seeing the sword energy that was about to hit him, Kaido knew he was going to be doomed because it was too late to dodge. However, in the next moment, a thin figure suddenly appeared and stood in front of him, blowing away the sword energy with a punch. Chin-Zi. Kaido looked at the figure in front of him, with black hair and black clothes, short in stature. I recognized it right away. At this moment, Kaido looked at this extremely thin back, and immediately felt a sense of security. And Shinzi, who had scattered his sword energy, turned his head to look at Lonely Red. No one was there. The moment he came to Kaido, he had already fled. What a cunning loach, Shinzi murmured. Looking back at Kaido, who was still a little shocked, he glanced around. It was found that his injuries had stopped, and there was no tendency to develop into a bad situation. And it was much better than when it was just blown away. This should be Kaido's physical fitness and fruit ability, automatically repairing injuries. Do you feel the difference in the world? Looking at Kaido, who was a little embarrassed, Shinzi raised his eyebrows and said. Hearing this, Kaido smiled and stood up. Looking at Shinzi, he said sincerely, "Thank you." The sword energy that Lonely Red had just swung was extremely powerful, and she didn't hold anything back when she struck. If Shinzi didn't appear in time just now, then the target of this sword energy, Kaido, can only resist with his body. The result will be death or disability. Although Kaido has always wanted to replace Shinzi in his heart, he is not a person who is right and wrong. In order to save him, Shinzi also missed the chance to kill Lonely Red. It is natural to say thank you. Hearing Kaido's thanks, Shinzi was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. Dare to bully my vice captain, this is the price. As soon as these words came out, Kaido suddenly felt a lot warmer in his heart. He understood that Shinzi had never made a move before, because he wanted to stimulate his potential and improve his strength in the battle. And it turns out that fighting is really useful. After fighting the Lonely Red, Kaido now feels as if he is about to awaken observation haki. It's just that it's still a little bit short now, and I need to go back and understand it. At the same time, Marine, who had been watching the field from a distance, was shocked at this moment. Lonely Red just ran away like this. Shinzi's strength can be called a monster, and he severely injured Lonely Red with one punch. This matter must be reported to Naval Headquarters. Quote, the Marines were shocked when they found that Lonely Red was nearly wiped out with a single punch. In the information given by Naval Headquarters, it is not weaker than the existence of Zephyr Vice Admiral. But under Shinzi's fist, it seemed that he had completely lost his ability to resist. Not to mention running away all the time, and being punched was covered in blood. At this time, they realized a very serious problem. Shinzi's strength has improved by leaps and bounds. The strength he has shown so far is not at the same level as when he competed with Zephyr. Go back. The colonel of Marines branch was full of shock, and said to the remaining soldiers around him. However, in the next second, his expression suddenly changed. Because he felt that there was a prehistoric beast staring at him at this moment. Next second, Shinzi and Kaido came in front of them. Yo, it's really fun to watch the show. Seeing Shinzi suddenly appear in front of them, the Marines seemed to have fallen into the abyss. Because in front of this person, they are like little chicks, without any power to fight back. Shinzi. Colonel Marine said these words through his teeth, his body trembling slightly. He was still thankful that he hid well and was not discovered. But now it seems that it has been exposed long ago, but Shinzi didn't take it to heart. Now after dealing with the matter at hand, I free my hands. How to deal with these people? Kaido looked at the Marines whose faces changed drastically, and said slowly. He can't decide the fate of these people, it depends on Shinzi's idea. Hearing this, Shinzi raised his hand and pressed it down, the meaning was obvious. Although Shinzi doesn't like to kill indiscriminately, but these people will definitely expose their strength when they go back. This is very unfavorable to Shinzi for the upcoming battle in the Valley of the Gods, letting the opponent see his own strength in advance. Because only by learning to hide first can we be surprised. Seeing Shinzi's actions, Kaido immediately understood the meaning. Kill. After dealing with those people in Marine, Shinzi left this place. After using the extra money to buy some food and clothing on the island, I didn't stay here too much. Because several Marines have contacted Naval Headquarters before, they must know that they are on this island with Kaido at this moment. When they came to the edge of the island, the luxury lifeboat was still there. Shinzi and Kaido drove the boat away. After 2 days at sea, the rocks was finally spotted. When returning to the rocks pirates, Shinzi chose to sleep. After sleeping on the lifeboat for a few days, Shinzi felt that the bed on the rocks was more comfortable. Lying on the bed, Chinzi recalled that battle in his mind. In the battle against the Lonely Red, observation haki is his biggest reliance. But when his own observation haki also breaks through, his advantage was gone, or it was greatly weakened, so he was finally defeated by himself. In addition, Chinzi felt that his strength had also improved a lot. It is manifested in physical fitness, strength, and speed. Thinking about it, a sense of fatigue suddenly came to my heart. Chinzi fell into a deep sleep. The next day, early in the morning, a philosophical remark came from a room inside the rocks. It's Chinzi's room. At this moment, I saw him staring at the black hair on the bed in a daze. Face full of shock, lost hair, he didn't expect this day to come so suddenly. Not a little preparedness and no trace of worry. Originally, in his prediction, the hair loss must be slowly falling out one by one. How could it be this way? Shocked, Chinzi hurried to the mirror. I saw that the hair on the head of the person reflected inside felt a lot thinner. But what made Chinzi feel a little relieved was that there was no direct bald spot. Reaching out to pick up the cup on the table, Chinzi was about to take a sip of water to calm down the shock. But when the cup was held in the hand, the sound of glass shattering came from the palm of the hand. Click! Suddenly, the cup shattered and fell to the ground with a loud sound. How is this going? Chinzi couldn't help murmuring. Without thinking about it, Chinzi felt that the cup was broken before, but he didn't notice it. When I picked it up, it just fell apart. Turning around, Chinzi picked up another cup on the table. Crack! Like the last glass, there was another sound of glass breaking. This time, Chinzi couldn't help frowning. When he took the second cup, he even swept it around. Intact, no cracks at all. But it ended up the same as the last cup. Chinzi's mind was spinning rapidly, looking for the reason. Suddenly, Chinzi's eyes lit up. He thought of the hair that fell out just now, and thought of a possibility. Could this be the result of a substantial increase in strength? His strength has reached a terrifying level. So with just a few gestures, you can easily affect the things around you. The more he thought about it, the more Chinzi felt that it was the reason. There was uncontrollable excitement in his eyes. Chinzi now deeply understands that sentence. I become bald, but I also become stronger. Finally, after going through that battle, my Saitama template really awakened. Chinzi is very curious at this moment, what level his strength has reached. But on this ship, it seems that it cannot be detected. This made Chinzi feel a little disappointed. Hey! Sighing, he raised his hand and touched the table lightly. Boom! The moment it touched Chinzi's palm, the table fell apart. Seeing this scene, Chinzi was stunned. This has already affected my normal life. In the next few days, Chinzi devoted all his energy to controlling his own strength. Because if this problem is not solved, Chinzi can be seen as a walking bomb. No, that can no longer describe Chinzi's current situation. Wherever the hand touches, it will shatter. Even the most basic life has become a problem. These days, even the meals are fed by Whitebeard himself. There is no way the food will fall to the ground when picking up the tableware. During this period of time, Chinzi can be said to have experienced a very good experience, the days when clothes are opened and meals are opened. One day, Chinzi was sitting on the edge of the deck, fishing with a fishing rod in his hand. Keep your eyes on the floats on the water. After living as a disabled person for a few days, Chinzi can basically control his strength now. Although it hasn't reached the same state as before, it won't break anything when it touches something. At least it's okay to eat and drink by yourself. Chinzi, how do you feel today? Whitebeard came to see Chinzi fishing, so he walked to Chinzi's side and asked. It's alright, look, I'm fine with a fishing rod now. Chinzi turned his head and said, this is already the 13th fishing rod. Gu la la la. That's good, you know I'll feed you these few days. The people on the boat looked at me differently. I finally don't have to do this in the future. Whitebeard laughed loudly when he heard Chinzi's words. He doesn't know what's wrong with Chinzi, what's broken when he touches it. Anyway, what he knows is that there is a popular saying on the ship these days. The ability of Whitebeard Shockfruit is just like Ichiraku, and the real expert still has to look at Chinzi. Fortunately, Chinzi is fine now, and has returned to his previous state, and that's enough. Yo, a fish is hooked. Seeing the buoy sinking, Chinzi immediately raised his hand to lift it up, and a big fish weighing about 20 catties appeared in front of him. Then after an arc in the air, he disappeared from Whitebeard's sight. Thump! The sound of a big fish falling into the water came out. This fish certainly did not expect that after experiencing the feeling of flying in the air, it could survive. Well, it seems that I still need more practice. Chinzi looked at the fish flying in the air and plunged into the sea, shook his head and said. This is how Chinzi exercises every day, using fishing to train himself to control his strength. At this time, a seagull delivering posters passed by the boat in the air. Whitebeard threw a few Baileys at it, and Seagull dropped a newspaper. Whitebeard found a chair, lay down comfortably, and looked at the newspaper in his hand with a satisfied face. The fishing rod in Chinzi's hand was broken just now, and he was no longer in the mood for fishing. Turning around, he took out 2 barrels of wine from the room, found a chair, and sat next to Whitebeard. This is a good wine that I bought from outside with a lot of money, and the one on the rocks is incomparable. Chinzi brought a barrel of wine to Whitebeard and said. However, Whitebeard didn't respond at this time, and seemed to be completely attracted by the contents of the newspaper in front of him. This made Chinzi stunned. Whitebeard is an alcoholic. He didn't respond to his barrel of strong wine. What is the content of this newspaper that is so attractive? I saw Whitebeard muttering to himself. Roger really does not disappoint. Just arrived in New World, there is actually a bounty of 1.5 billion Baileys, tisk tisk tisk. Just as Whitebeard finished speaking, Chinzi dropped the wine barrel in his hand and grabbed the newspaper. Thanks to Chinzi doing this, if it were someone else, Whitebeard's fist carrying the shock fruit would have greeted him. Chinzi, do you know Gordy? Roger, why are you so excited? Chinzi was taken aback when he heard this, and then said. I don't know him, but I just heard his name. It is said that people with D in their names are not ordinary, just like our Captain Rock's D. Begier. Also, I've heard some rumors about this before, so I was a little excited when I heard the name just now. Chinzi found an excuse and said. He certainly can't say that he not only knows Roger, but also knows what happened before and after him. Looking at Roger's photo in the poster, Chinzi was deeply moved. If Roger appears, then the Valley of the Gods is bound to come. I don't know what wonderful physical reaction will happen when there is this variable of myself. Whitebeard crossed his arms and said with interest. Rumor, doesn't the word D have any special meaning? I don't know the details, but it is said that in the Holy Land of Mariajoy, people call the D clan the natural enemies of God. I didn't really believe it at first, but until I met Rox. Chinzi said slowly. Roger, Rox, Garp, and later, Dragon, Luffy, Blackbeard, etc. are all members of the D family. And they are the storm figures in the entire High Z world, affecting the changes in the world's situation. God's natural enemy. No wonder this guy is so powerful. There is a bounty of 1.5 billion when he first came to New World. Whitebeard frowned slightly, thinking about something. Oh, it seems that you and Roger have known each other before. Chinzi knew that Roger and Whitebeard had a good personal relationship, but he didn't know how they met, so he couldn't help asking. I played against him briefly in the first half of the Grand Line. Whitebeard glanced at Chinzi and explained. Hearing this, Chinzi raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect these two people to know each other so early, and even fought against each other. I didn't expect you to have such an experience. What about the final result? Chinzi was a little curious about the result of the fight between these two people. One was the later One Piece, and the other was the strongest man later. There is no winner. Whitebeard picked up the barrel of wine and sipped it. Hearing what Whitebeard said, Chinzi smiled and didn't continue to ask. Picking up the spirits that had been thrown aside just now, he drank it. This wine is really good, much better than the wine on this boat. That's right, I told you that I spent a lot of money to buy it. Quote quote. At the same time, Rox in the captain's cabin also saw the newspaper of Roger's arrival in New World. There was an inexplicable smile on the corner of his mouth. Galdi, Roger, will you be my aide in world domination, or will you be my enemy? In the blink of an eye, Chinzi was exercising in his room. John barged in suddenly, shouted loudly, Chinzi, the boss of Rox has a meeting, go to the conference room to gather immediately. In the evening, Rox was on board and held a meeting that only the captain could attend. In the conference room, Rox sits at the center of the table, while other cadres sit on the sides. Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Charlotte Linlin, Akoku, John, Silver Axe, Chinzi and other captains sat down one by one, waiting for Rox to start the meeting. Recently, a very interesting pirate group appeared on this sea. Rox looked at the crowd, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Interesting pirate group, do you mean the Roger pirate group? Akoku looked at Rox and spoke. During this period, the Roger pirates rose rapidly in New World. Due to the adventurous spirit of this pirate group and the strength of the crew, they have fought against Marine many times. In a short period of time, it became what Marines call a supernova. In addition to the Rox pirates, the most famous and powerful one is the Roger pirates. Yes, this pirate group came to New World not long ago. Their captain is Gordy Roger, with a bounty of 1.5 billion Baileys. They hold some important secrets about the world government. For our Rox pirate group it's very important to say. Moreover, not only Roger is strong. His crew is not weak at all. As soon as the words fell, the reward orders of the four main forces of the Roger pirates were thrown in front of everyone's table. Roger, Rayleigh, Jabba, Bullet. You can see it from the reward order. Roger, a bounty of 1.5 billion Baileys. Rayleigh, a bounty of 1.1 billion Baileys. Jabba, 950 million Baileys bounty. Bullet, 950 million Baileys bounty. Looking at the bounty on the table, Chinzi narrowed his eyes. Compared to the Rox pirates, the Roger pirates are not strong enough. According to what Chinzi knows so far, the rewards offered by the captains can be seen. Rox, a bounty of 2.7 billion Baileys. Chinzi, a bounty of 1.7 billion Baileys is offered. Whitebeard, 145 quadrillion Baileys bounty. Golden Lion, a bounty of 1.3 billion Baileys. Charlotte Linlin, 125 quadrillion Baileys bounty. Akoku, 1 billion Bailey bounty. John, 950 million Baileys bounty. Silver Axe, 900 million Baileys bounty. For a pirate group of this strength, we Rox need to win them over. Now, I need to send 2 people to complete this mission. Is anyone willing to go? Rox looked around and asked. But as Rox's words fell, the entire meeting room fell silent. Watching this scene, the corners of Chinzi's mouth rose slightly. It turns out that in the world of pirates, the meeting of these strong men is the same as the meeting in the company in the previous life. As soon as the leader finished speaking, everyone below chose to remain silent. Captain, let me go. Roger is a big pirate with a bounty of 1.5 billion. Among the current captains, I am the only one who is a little taller than him. It will be safer for me to go. Chinzi spoke at this moment. Hearing Chinzi's words, all the captains couldn't help but look sideways in amazement. Chinzi, who has always disliked trouble, actually took the initiative to lean towards trouble this time. You must know that a pirate group with strength and faith like Roger is generally difficult to be wooed by other pirate groups. And it is very likely that there will be conflicts when they meet, and whether they can come back will not be said for the time being. Anyway, it must be a thankless thing. I knew it, Chinzi, you won't let me down. Rox saw Chinzi take the initiative, a smile appeared on his face. It just looks a little creepy. The reason why Chinzi wants to go is mainly because he wants to meet the former One Piece who started the age of sailing. If possible, Chinzi doesn't mind trying to see how strong he is. As for recruiting the Roger pirates, Chinzi never thought about it. The chances of him knowing this are almost nil, because Rox and Roger's philosophies are fundamentally different. One wants to dominate the world, the other is just a simple adventurer, yearning for freedom. The two of them would never mix together, and meeting could only result in a fight. As Rox's voice fell, Whitebeard also spoke. Since that's the case, the other candidate, let me go. The reason for Whitebeard to go is very simple, to accompany Chinzi, and to meet Roger, an old friend. Since the last time they met, the two of them have never known each other, and they are very opposite in temper, and they haven't seen each other for a long time now. And I have been on the Rox ship for too long, and it is too depressing to stay on the ship all the time. Take advantage of this opportunity to go out and relax. Hearing this, the captains looked sideways again. But he wasn't too surprised. After all, Qinzi, who had the best relationship with him, went, and he could understand that he went with him. Ha ha ha, with the two of you, I feel relieved. Rox laughed when he saw that Whitebeard also chose to go. The two captains with the highest bounties of the two Rox pirates must succeed this time. Even if it is unsuccessful, you can still find out the route of the Roger pirates, and then retreat completely. That's it, let's adjourn the meeting. The next day, Rox prepared the boat for Qinzi and Whitebeard in advance, and when they boarded the boat, he handed them a map. Rox has inquired about the approximate area where the Roger pirates are located in advance. With this map, you can avoid many detours. On board, Qinzi and Whitebeard also packed a lot of food and wine. These were bought by Qinzi on the island. On the way to the Roger pirates, eating and drinking is a must. After saying goodbye to everyone, the two of them just drove the boat towards the sea area on the map. Today's weather is very good, the sun is high, Qinzi is standing on the bow of the boat blowing the oncoming sea breeze. It seems that in this world, there are relatively few rainy days, and it is rare to see violent storms on the sea. These are the experiences Qinzi gained at sea in the past few months. Of course, it is also possible that it is not the rainy season. Edward, do you know much about the Roger pirates? Blowing the sea breeze, Qinzi looked at Whitebeard who was sitting on the side of the boat and said, I don't know much about it. I just fought with Roger. I still knew about his main crew during the meeting. Whitebeard said slowly, ha ha ha, we'll know when we meet. Qinzi originally wanted to say something about Roger pirates, but after thinking about it, I think it's better to forget it. Let's wait until after the Valley of the Gods. Wait, compared to this, are you sure our direction is okay? Of course, my navigation skills are excellent. What's the matter with the island in front? It's not on the map at all. Let me see. Turn left quickly and go full speed ahead. I have to say that New World is really too big. Even though Qinzi and Whitebeard have the map given by Rox, they still know the general direction of Roger pirates. But it's also hard to find them. During the period, the direction was yaw several times. If Whitebeard hadn't discovered it in time, it would have been wrong in one direction. The food brought on the boat was almost eaten, and Qinzi would still do fishing during this period. The first purpose is to get some food, and the second purpose is to practice the control of strength. After these days of wandering at sea, Qinzi's control over his own power is almost perfect. Flexible. Fortunately, this situation did not last too long. After sailing for several days, finally found an island. In the past, add some supplies first, otherwise we will starve to death on the boat before we find anyone. Approaching the port, disembarking, finding a bar, Whitebeard, who hadn't had a drink in days, couldn't wait. Bring up the best wine in your store, as much as you can. Whitebeard slapped the counter and shouted into the bar. Whitebeard, who is 6 meters tall, is muscular, full of momentum, and very oppressive. A few bartenders tremblingly came over with large wooden barrels to fill Whitebeard. No need, I'll do it myself. After all, Whitebeard opened the barrel directly, picked up the barrel and poured it into his mouth. As one cask of wine was drained, Whitebeard picked up another cask, as if it seemed a bottomless pit. The bar guests next to the bar were dumbfounded. In contrast, Qinzi is much more elegant, drinking in small sips. At this moment, the conversations of several people caught his attention. Have you heard? The pirate group that appeared in New World recently is amazing. That's right, I heard that the 8 Treasures Navy has run into someone else. The 8 Treasures Navy lost. The leader of the pirate group is Roger, and the bounty is 1.5 billion Baileys. It's true. Several people wanted to say something. Qinzi walked over directly. I don't know if the rookie pirates you are talking about are the Roger pirates. Hearing Qinzi's words, several people were taken aback, and one of them said excitedly, yeah, do you know that too? I don't know if you have 8 trigrams to talk about. I just learned about it from other people's mouths. After all, Qinzi threw $100 Bailey on the table. I don't know, do you guys know where this 8 Treasure Navy is? Seeing Qinzi's money, one of them blinked and silently accepted it. It's on the island, if you walk in this direction, you can see it. He pointed in one direction and said. Hearing this, Qinzi nodded and turned to look at Whitebeard. Let's go, there is business to do. The Eight Treasures Navy is a violent pirate group that came to the New World from the West Blue Flower Country. In the original book, Luffy also had a relationship with them. With a large number of people and a long history, they can be regarded as a well-known pirate group in New World, and their leader is called Dongliang. Qingjiao is the 10th second-generation pillar of the Eight Treasures Navy, and the bounty is 420 million Baileys. In the tent, Qingjiao was drinking wine alone. Not long ago, there was a fight between the Eight Treasures Navy and the Roger Pirates, and the opponents were extremely powerful. If it weren't for the fact that the person opposite was not a vicious person, he might not even be able to come back. Although he said he lost, Qingjiao didn't give up because of this. He was going to recuperate and practice for a while. Challenge the Roger Pirates again and justify your name in the New World. Qingjiao Dongliang, something is wrong, 2 men are coming in, and the brothers can't stop it. 2 people, are they from the Roger Pirates? No. Quickly, take someone to have a look. When Qingjiao arrived, all the people in the camp fell to the ground, but fortunately they just fainted and did not die. I saw 2 men walking towards him at this moment, one tall and one short, full of pressure. Every step you take can give people a strong deterrent, even green peppers feel a little strenuous. Whitebeard folded his arms on his chest, looked down at him, and said, "You are the leader of the Eight Treasures Navy. We need you." Looking at the 2 people in front of him, he was completely defiant. One is more than 6 meters tall, with blonde hair, and the other is 1.8 meters tall, with black hair and black pupils, plain and ordinary. The anger in Qingjiao's heart was burning. He was defeated by the Roger Pirates before. He was already full of anger, and now he wanted to vent it completely. "Brothers, kill them." Qin Zi smiled, the conqueror's haki on his body was turned on, and a strong sense of oppression surged like a tide. Boom! Those who were brought over by the green pepper fainted in an instant. Foaming at the mouth, rolling eyes. Qingjiao hurriedly stood up at this time, and the conqueror's haki on her body suddenly opened. The 2 strands of haki were colliding, and within a few seconds, green pepper's conqueror's haki was dispersed by Qin Zi's. Touching the sweat on his forehead, Qingjiao didn't expect this person to be so strong. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something, and his face changed slightly. These 2 people seemed to be members of the Rocks Pirates. Edward Newgate and Qin Zi. At this moment, Qingjiao was terrified, not because he was afraid of death. It's because the Rocks Pirates are so famous and stinky that they are known as the evil pirates. The pirate group that was targeted by them almost had no good results in the end, and none of them would be killed. If he got into trouble with such a pirate group, his Eight Treasures Navy might be completely wiped out. Besides, the 2 people standing in front of them are already untouchable existences. Thinking of this, Qingjiao's posture was kept to the lowest. "I don't know, Lord Qin Zi, what orders does Lord Edward have?" Seeing that Qingjiao recognized himself in Whitebeard, Qin Zi smiled and said straight to the point. "I heard that you fought against the Roger Pirates." Hearing this, Qingjiao breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that she was not looking for her. "Yes, just 5 days ago." "Well, we need you to take us to the Roger Pirates. I don't know if it's convenient." Hearing this, Qingjiao hastily nodded his all head, and said appropriately, "No problem, very convenient. Since the last time I failed to fight against the Roger Pirates, I have been sending people to follow them, hoping to get back. So I know exactly where they are now." Hear this. Whitebeard and Qin Zi looked at each other and smiled. It seems that this time they really found the right person. Leave the boat on the island where the Eight Treasures Navy is located. Qin Zi and Whitebeard board the Eight Treasures Navy's pirate ship, let them lead the way, and go to pursue the Roger pirate group. The Eight Treasures Navy pirates on board already knew the identities of Qin Zi and Whitebeard at this time. They didn't dare to show their atmosphere on the boat, and kept them at a respectful distance. Sitting on the edge of the boat, Qin Zi is blowing the sea breeze. Qingjiao sat at the bow of the ship, holding a map and recording guide in his hand, and was identifying the direction for the ship. The awl-like head shape looks extraordinarily eye-catching. Qin Zi walked up to Qingjiao, crossed his arms, and asked with great interest. "I heard that your armament haki is extremely powerful, and has a nickname called Cone of Green Pepper. It can knock everything away with its head. I wonder if it's true." Qin Zi remembers that in the original book, when Green Pepper was at its peak, he had a fight with Garp the Fist. In the end, although he lost, he could resist Garp's iron fist for a long time with the head of the awl, and his strength should not be bad. Besides, Green Pepper is also the owner of Conqueror's Hockey. Seeing Qin Zi ask about the awl head that he has always been proud of, Qingjiao suddenly became interested and said proudly, "Of course, there is nothing in this world that I can't break open." Hearing Qingjiao's words, Qin Zi smiled, "You can't pretend to be Garp's fist. Since this is the case, do you want to compete with me? Let me see. Is your strength really as powerful as the rumors? Your awl head, can you really smash everything?" Qin Zi had a whim this time and wanted to try the awl head of the green pepper. In addition to being really curious about the hardness of the head of the cone, I also want to see how my current strength is. After all, Qin Zi hasn't done a good job since losing his hair. Ha ha ha. It's an honor to compete with the captain of the Rocks Pirates, a big pirate with a bounty of 1.7 billion Baileys. Qingjiao was very excited to hear Qin Zi's words, this young man who has gained fame in this sea. His strength was rumored to be extremely strong among the pirates, and being able to fight against such a person was a good opportunity to improve his strength. Then come on. Qin Zi smiled. Ever since, under the watchful eyes of the pirates, the two took their positions, ready to fight. One stood at the bow and one at the stern. Qin Zi put his hands in his pockets, looked at Qingjiao opposite and said calmly, "You shoot first. Take out your most powerful moves." Hearing this, Qingjiao didn't hesitate at all, and the aura on her body suddenly exploded. The meat cone on the head was covered in black in an instant, shaped like an iron cone. He knew that the person he was facing was a ruthless person. Even if he didn't say anything, he would directly use the big move. Next moment, Qingjiao stepped on the ground with both feet, jumped into the air, and shouted loudly, "Eight-punch fist Watu!" The green pepper in the air spun rapidly, locked onto Qin Zi, and smashed towards him like a meteorite. The strength of the whole body, coupled with the strength of his own attack, doubled the power of this move. "All go. It's the trick of our pillars." I didn't expect Qingjiao Dongliang to amplify his moves as soon as he came up. Like a human-shaped cannonball, its power is absolutely terrifying. I don't know how to deal with it. Quote. The onlookers saw that Qingjiao directly used the trick, so they couldn't help discussing it. Seeing this, Qin Zi raised his hand slowly, not even using armament hockey, the moment the green pepper was about to hit him. Aim at the nose cone, flick the index finger slightly. My brain is broken. Clang. There was a sound like iron striking, and Qingjiao didn't hold on for even a second. The body flew upside down like a shell fired from its chamber, smashing a human-shaped crater on the deck. Green pepper pillar. The pirates who saw this scene suddenly exclaimed. A few minutes later, Qingjiao crawled out of the hole in embarrassment, with a look of resignation on his face. He was even more horrified in his heart. Is this the big pirate with a bounty of 1.7 billion? His famous stunt was actually cracked by a single finger, and he has no power to fight back. Green pepper boss, your head. Green pepper pillar, the top of your head seems to be. When the pirates saw the green pepper crawling out of the hole at this time, their faces were extremely ugly. They all reminded Qingjiao to look at the top of his head. Hearing the discussions of the pirates, Qingjiao's face changed slightly, and a bad premonition emerged in his heart. With apprehension, he raised his hand to touch the top of his head. Nothing at all. I rely on it. At this moment, Qingjiao stayed there. After a while, he realized that despair and anger occupied his brain, and he turned his head to look at Qin Zi. You give me back the head cone. You must know that in this new world, the absence of the iron cone that Qingjiao is proud of means that its strength has been greatly weakened. And most importantly, the treasures that Qingjiao plundered were all hidden in the glacier that he could only open with his own head. Now that the cone is gone, so is the treasure, which is worse than letting him die. Facing Qingjiao's anger and despair, Qin Zi touched his nose. He didn't expect that the head of Qingjiao would be knocked off in this blow. But there is still room for salvation, it's just that it's sunken in, and it can be pulled out again. Green pepper pillar, don't get excited, there is still help. After finishing speaking, Qin Zi hurriedly walked to Qingjiao's side and motioned for him to sit down. Take a deep breath and cover your head with armament hockey. Qin Zi reached out to touch Qingjiao's head, put his 2 fingers together, and clamped the small part of the head cone that was still exposed. Stab. There was a sound of metal rubbing against each other. Under Chin-Zi's tremendous strength, the shiny black head cone was pulled out. All right. Chin-Zi looked at the intact Zuji, clapped his hands, and said with a smile. Hearing this, Qingjiao reached out to touch it, and sure enough, it came back again. The feeling of regaining the loss made him ecstatic. He stood up abruptly, and thanked him repeatedly. A brain collapse has cracked our leader's trick, and he can get it back. Is this the big pirate with a bounty of 1.7 billion? Armament hockey is useless. It feels scarier than the last time I met Roger. Simply a monster. Quote, quote. The pirates' onlookers saw that the head cone of their pillar had come back, and while they were happy, they were also shocked at the same time. Because Chin-Zi's current strength is stronger than Roger's. At the same time, Whitebeard, who had been watching the battle beside him, was shocked. Chin-Zi's strength has been greatly improved compared to before, and he feels that he may not be Chin-Zi's opponent now. It's only been a few months. What a monster this is. Looking at the green pepper with an excited face at this time, Chin-Zi thought of something. Blinking his eyes, he whispered in his ear. When you meet a man named Garp in the future, remember not to be a. Avoid it if you can. Hearing Chin-Zi's words, Qingjiao's expression froze, and she looked confused. He was about to ask why, but Chin-Zi walked away after saying this, which made him confused. At this moment, the navigator of the 8 Treasures Navy ran over and said, Boss Green Pepper, the Roger pirates are ahead. Hearing this, Chin-Zi snatched the telescope from the navigator and looked into the distance. Sure enough, I saw a pirate flag fluttering in the wind. On the flag was a skull with a wavy beard, which was the logo of the Roger Pirates. At the same time, within the Roger Pirates, several main members of the pirate group were sitting around a fire, eating barbecue and drinking fine wine, chatting and laughing. Ha ha ha, Captain, it's only been a short time since we've been in New World, and we've already gained quite a reputation. I believe it won't be long before we can catch up with the Rocks Pirates. Bullet gnawed on a piece of cooked meat in his hand and laughed. Indeed, as soon as we landed in New World, Marine defined us as a dangerous pirate group. Now Captain Rogers' Marine has reached 1.5 billion Baileys, and it is ranked among the top few in the entire New World. Holding a wine barrel in his hand, Jabba spoke. Before arriving in New World, the Roger Pirates had already gained a great reputation. In the first half of the Grand Line, it was spread by word of mouth. Originally, a few years ago, they already had the ability to go to the New World. But because of Roger's affairs, they stayed in the Grand Line for a long time. It wasn't until a while ago that they successfully made up their minds and arrived in New World. After arriving in New World, they can be said to be like ducks in water. During the voyage of New World, they recruited many powerful crew members. Now, jump right into the first echelon of the New World. Apart from the notorious Rocks Pirates, they have almost no rivals. From the Grand Line to the New World, our sailing journey was quite smooth. Bullet said. Actually, the Rocks Pirates are also responsible for this. In Naval Headquarters, the Rocks Pirates are the primary target, and Marine is the key target for elimination. Let their pirate group relieve a lot of pressure from the headquarters, so the development is so rapid. New World is still not that simple. If you want to compare it to Grand Line, we still can't take it lightly here. Especially the Rocks Pirates, they are much more dangerous than Marine. Rayleigh reminded. Your worry is unnecessary. New World is so big, we want to meet the Rocks Pirates, but we can't. Besides, the Rocks Pirates are Marine's key caregivers, so they should devote themselves to Marine's side right now. Jabba said noncommittally. It's better to be careful in everything. We don't know what others will think, so we plan for the worst. Roger, who had been silent all this time, opened his mouth at this moment, while drinking, while looking at the bounties offered by the members of the Rocks Pirates. His eyes fell on the two of them. Rocks, 2.7 billion, Chin-Zi, 1.7 billion. These two people were both higher than his bounty, which made him raise his eyebrows. Although the bounty does not necessarily represent strength, it also has a certain reference function. He knew about rocks, so he wasn't surprised. But this newcomer Chin-Zi who appeared suddenly made him very curious and wanted to see it with his own eyes. While everyone was discussing, a crew member ran over and said out of breath, "Captain, the 8 Treasures Navy is catching up again." Hearing this, everyone was taken aback for a moment, stopped what they were doing, and looked behind. These people are really troublesome. When will they give up? I like their never say die, challenging spirit. This is the pirate spirit, Roger said. If he hadn't admired the 8 Treasures Navy and their leader Qingjiao, how could Roger have played with them for so long? In the first match, none of them could go back. Before, Roger also invited Green Pepper to join his pirate group, but was rejected. After a while, the boat of the 8 Treasures Navy sailed over, keeping pace with Roger's dressing table. Bullet stood beside the boat and taunted Qingjiao, "Hey, the head of the cone, the skin is itchy again, isn't it?" Hearing this, the corner of Qingjiao's mouth twitched, and then he said, "I'm not here to fight with you today. There are 2 people who want to see you, and I'm just leading the way." As soon as Qingjiao finished speaking, Qinzi and Whitebeard walked to the side of the boat, facing the Roger pirates. After Qinzi and Whitebeard appeared, someone quickly recognized them. After all, their appearance was posted everywhere in New World. These 2 are the captains of the Rocks Pirates. Edward Newgate with a bounty of 1.45 billion, and Qinzi with a bounty of 1.7 billion. Hearing this, the faces of those who didn't know Roger pirates were also shocked at this time. The people on the Rocks pirate group, and the bounty is higher than their captain, they are not kind. Edward, Qinzi. Jabba's face was so ugly right now that he slapped his face too fast. I said just now that no one from the Rocks Pirates could be met, but I didn't expect 2 captains from the Rocks Pirates to come after a while. The situation doesn't look good. Rayleigh's face changed, and he looked at Roger and said, "Captain, what's next?" But Roger couldn't see any horror in his eyes, and he ignored Rayleigh's words. Instead, he laughed loudly. He ha ha ha. Seeing this scene, Whitebeard and Qinzi looked at each other, a little confused. Roger laughed because he saw an old friend, Whitebeard. There was also the appearance of Qinzi. Just now he wanted to meet this young man with a higher bounty than him. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, it really came true. "Edward, Qinzi, how about a drink on my boat?" After Roger laughed, he directly invited both of them. "Gu la la la. That's exactly what I mean." The 2 jumped side by side towards the ship of the Roger pirates. After Hockey landed on the ground, the whole ship shook. Full of kingly demeanor, it is daunting. Turning to look at the 8 Treasures sailors, he waved his hand and signaled them to leave. Seeing this, Qingjiao left quickly with the crew of the 8 Treasures Navy, not wanting to stay with Qinzi any longer. But Qinzi, Whitebeard, and Roger looked at each other in blank dismay. The 3 on the deck of the Roger pirates fell silent after looking at each other. Qinzi was the first to speak. "The purpose of our coming here, I think you can guess it. Our captain wants to invite you to join the Rocks Pirates." As soon as he finished speaking, Jabba, who was holding 2 axes beside him, jumped up and slashed straight at Qinzi. "Hey, why didn't you wait for me to finish?" Qinzi shook his head, raised his right hand, and collided with the double axes. The sound was thunderous, and Jabba stepped back about 10 meters, if Rayleigh next to him hadn't stepped up to support him in time. By this time Jabba had fallen into the sea. What happened just now, so fast? I didn't see it clearly, except for a voice. I only saw Jabba slashing towards Qinzi, and then flew out backwards. Quote. The repelled Jabba was full of dissatisfaction, and wanted to rush over to attack Qinzi, but Rayleigh next to him stopped him. "Jabba, your axe." Hearing this, Jabba looked down and was shocked to find that his axe was covered with cracks. Crack, bang. At this moment, the axe in his hand shattered into several small pieces in the air, and fell to the deck, making a crisp sound. Jabba looked at the fragments of the axe scattered all over the ground, inexplicably surprised. "Don't make trouble, this level of competition is not something we can get involved in," Rayleigh solemnly reminded him. In the Roger Pirates, Captain Roger's surname is Gold, Rayleigh is Silver, and Jabba is Copper. Jabba is the 3rd person in the Roger Pirates, that is, the 3rd leader. But compared to Roger, his strength is still much inferior, let alone Qinzi. With this blow, Qinzi showed mercy. "Hey ha ha ha, your strength is really strong, it seems that your reputation is not in vain." Roger saw Jabba, who was shattered by Chinzi's double axe with one blow, and said with a smile, "Let's continue the topic just now." Chinzi did not respond to Roger's appreciation. "I'll talk about these things later, let's have a drink." Roger seemed to know what Chinzi wanted to say, and interrupted him directly. "We don't have anything else on board, but there are a lot of fine wines, I guarantee you will be satisfied." "Gu la la la. Then drink the wine first." Whitebeard heard that Roger's ship had a lot of wine and couldn't help it now. At Roger's command, the crew brought a variety of spirits. "Come on, cheers." The three large bowls collided together, making a crisp sound. "Hiss, it really is good wine," Whitebeard exclaimed with a satisfied face. Chinzi swallowed a bowl of wine, grabbed a chicken leg beside him, and chewed it. "So, we are the captains of the Two Rocks Pirates, and the captain of the Roger Pirates, let's drink and chat here." Any pirate on the sea would be amazed at such a scene. If Marines saw this, the entire headquarters would be a sensation. Is it possible that the two major pirate groups of New World are going to join forces? From the looks of it, it is indeed the case. Roger poured himself another bowl of wine and said with a satisfied face, "I just don't know, are we enemies or friends?" Chinzi threw the finished chicken leg aside, and said slowly, "Hey, it depends on whether you want to be an enemy or a friend." Roger laughed. Speaking of this, he put down the big bowl in his hand, and his face suddenly became serious. "Chinzi, how about joining my Roger Pirates?" This idea, when he saw Chinzi's bounty, he had already thought about it. After seeing Chinzi in person this time, I became more determined in my mind. After all, someone who can come out with Whitebeard and have a good relationship will definitely not be an ambitious person like Rox. Moreover, during the brief contact just now, Roger thought that Chinzi was very to his liking. Hearing this, Chinzi's wine bowl was stagnant in midair, and the corners of his mouth were raised. "Let me join the Roger Pirates. Are you worthy? You'll know if you try it." Roger laughed after hearing this. As soon as his words fell, Chinzi's momentum suddenly rose, and the Conqueror's haki was fully opened. Seeing this, Roger clapped his hands, and his aura suddenly rose. This moment, the two released Conqueror's haki at the same time and collided. Everyone present has already seen that this is not a duel, but a competition of haki. Next moment, the wind and rain suddenly changed, the waves were rough, the surrounding air seemed to be drained, making it difficult to breathe, and the space seemed to become distorted. The competition between the two made Whitebeard on the side a little bit impatient, his eyes were ignited, and the bowl in his hand was thrown aside. Buzz! Whitebeard's Conqueror's haki is on. The three of haki collided on Roger's pirate ship, setting off a storm. The aura shot straight into the sky, the clouds above began to twist, and the sky gradually became dark. All of a sudden, the situation changed suddenly, and the wind blew up. All three had extremely excited smiles on their faces, and haki was still rising. Under the haki, almost all the crew members on the ship were lying on the deck, and only the main three were still struggling to support themselves. "Rayleigh, Jabba, Bullet. What's going on here? Why are you drinking, and you're making moves?" "I don't know. If they do this, we crew members will suffer." Three Conquerors haki, fighting at the same time, so terrifying. All three have Conqueror's haki, but compared with these three, they are not at the same level at all. Even it takes a lot of effort to support them. Another few minutes passed, and Rayleigh and Jabba were left standing on the boat. Bullet was half kneeling on the deck already. Rayleigh couldn't bear it any longer, and said to the three of them, "If you don't stop, something big will happen." "It seems that we can only go here today," Roger said regretfully. After speaking, he started to evacuate without asking the two of them. Seeing this, Chinzi and Whitebeard did not hesitate at all, and then restrained their momentum back. "Hey, I didn't expect you to be so young, but Conqueror's haki is so thick, it's amazing." Roger picked up his glass again and laughed. Hearing this, Chinzi shrugged. The reason why he chose to use Conqueror's haki is mainly to see how the haki of the future One Piece is. Can I learn a thing or two from it and improve my haki level? After all, at present, armament haki and observation haki have reached the advanced level, and only Conqueror's haki is almost ready. Actually, this is just my weakest item. Chinzi raised his eyebrows and said slowly. Oh, looks like I still have to try. After finishing speaking, Roger raised the 12-handed ace of the supreme sharp knife on one side, and slashed at Chin Z directly. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.